Dungeons are big underground mazes where some people go to find treasure while others fight the dark forces hiding inside. People who explore these giant caves looking for money get called adventurers, while those who beat the darkness get respected as heroes. Our main character, Luke, is proud of his 15 years as an adventurer, though things go wrong when the hero he joined to fight evil betrays him just a second ago. Now Luke lies on the ground, knocked out and left behind. A few hours earlier, someone comes to him and kicks him awake, calling him a useless third-rate adventurer. Luke gets up and inquires about what's going on. The hero stands there questioning him about the repel amulet. He explains that Luke was supposed to put it in the center of the camp. Luke insists he did put it exactly where he was told. The hero then gestures toward their packs, showing that monsters ate all their food. He accuses Luke of causing the mess, declaring that he is an idiot who put the amulet in the wrong place, leaving all their packs outside its protective area. Luke coughs and claims he has no idea what's happening. The hero turns to Julia, asking her to confirm how much food they have left. Julia responds that they probably won't have enough to get back to the surface once they finish their mission here. The hero shouts, demanding to know how they are supposed to fix this problem. Luke reiterates that he did exactly what the hero told him to do. Julia steps in, challenging whether Luke really thinks excuses will help him. Luke indicates the rocks he stacked to make a stand at the center of the camp, demonstrating that the amulet must have been moved after he set it down. He reminds the hero about getting thirsty last night and going to the packs for a drink, suggesting something might have been knocked over then. The hero pauses, admitting it's possible something like that happened. Our dude starts to argue that if that's true, then the hero shouldn't blame him. Suddenly, a girl from behind casts a paralysis spell. Luke screams and turns around as the hero remarks that it doesn't matter who's to blame. Two girls stand there now, and the hero keeps talking, asserting that what happens next matters more, then seeking confirmation from his sister. Both girls agree right away. One girl states that if there isn't enough food, then they should make their group smaller. Luke questions what she means, and she clarifies that they have a perfect person to sacrifice, pointing toward their boy. The hero judges it as a reasonable decision. Julia adds that having one fewer person means their food will last longer. The hero follows up by noting that losing someone whose only ability is repair won't make much difference anyway. He then gives Luke a sword, calling it a final act of mercy, and remarks that he doesn't even want payment for it. Luke is left in disbelief, unable to grasp how he has ended up in this situation. When the paralysis spell finally fades, his thoughts turn inward. He knows it's true that he really is a low-rank adventurer. 15 years have passed, and he's still only E rank. Repair is the only skill he has. If he were to die here, no one would notice. The guild wouldn't care. Even so, being treated like this is unbearable. He decides he won't accept death here. He will survive and escape this dungeon. He checks the sword they abandoned him with and sees that it's old and poorly made. Before anything else, the blade needs fixing. They didn't take his iron powder, and that small mistake gives him hope. Using his repair skill, he restores the sword and decides it should be usable. He knows he can't fight strong monsters, so he plans to avoid encounters altogether. No matter how long it takes, even if it takes days, he'll move slowly and quietly until he finds his way out. 2 weeks go by. Luke grows weak and painfully hungry. He realizes he hasn't eaten anything at all during this time. He's only stayed alive because of the magical water flowing through the dungeon. There's no point in turning back now. His foot suddenly strikes a scattered skeleton, and the impact startles him. Before he can react, the bones pull together and rise into a towering undead form. Instinct carries him through the moment, and he manages to shatter it with a single desperate swing. Once the creature collapses into pieces, he notices the edge of his sword has worn down again. After so many repairs, the blade barely holds itself together, and the pouch of iron powder is finally empty. He tries repairing the sword anyway, but the skill refuses to activate. Panic hits him sharply until the blade suddenly reforms on the second attempt. That strange delay forces him to think about how the skill actually works. He recalls hearing somewhere that repair temporarily breaks down both the damaged portion and the virgin material, then reconstructs them into the original shape. As he examines the dungeon wall, he wonders what would happen if the wall itself became the replacement material. A memory flashes through his mind. The hero once tried smashing the same type of wall out of impatience, and Julia warned him that the weapon would break. The hero casually replied that Luke could just fix it afterwards, as if that was Luke's only use. Thinking about that moment makes Luke place his hand on the wall and activate the skill on impulse. The solid rock cracks apart instantly, shocking him. Even the hero could not damage these walls, yet his repair skill just forced them to break. He picks up a fragment and realizes it feels more like metal than stone. The possibility hits him at once. The skill must have changed. He does not understand why, but it clearly allows him to use materials he never could before. If he can replace parts of a sword with something this durable, then that weapon might become powerful enough to rely on. He experiments again by pressing the sword against the wall and activating repair. The wall remains untouched, but the blade comes out flawless. The durability is far beyond what he had earlier. With this new advantage, he begins carving openings in the walls and moving through quieter passages. Simply being able to control where he walks instead of following the usual routes drastically improves his chances of survival. He gathers fragments of the broken walls to use as spare material and continues deeper with renewed determination. Curiosity leads him to test the decomposition side of the skill on the poisonous lichen. When he focuses on it, the moss dissolves slightly, but the process is weak and unstable. He realizes that living things resist magic because of their own natural energy, so the skill struggles to break them down. Since repair was never meant to affect living bodies in the first place, he assumes there will never be a reason to force it further. For now, escaping the dungeon matters more than anything else. After more searching, he finally reaches a staircase leading upward. Every step feels like a battle, but the moment he climbs out into sunlight, he feels a rush of relief. For the first time in weeks, he breathes fresh air. Yet his body is shutting down from hunger, and he knows he needs food immediately. He grabs a berry from a nearby tree, but something in his instincts warns him it is rotten. That realization surprises him, since he has never possessed that kind of intuition before. Before he can think it through, a distant scream echoes from somewhere nearby. He forces his body to move toward the sound, believing someone might be in danger. As he approaches, he sees two girls struggling against a massive creature. One tries to push the other away, insisting she escape, but neither of them can leave because the threat is right in front of them. When Luke recognizes the enormous shadow as a dragon, his breath stops. Dragons are creatures that normally never leave their own dungeons, so the sight of one in the open leaves him frozen. One of the girls can barely stand, her sword snapped in half, and her body covered in injuries. Luke watches her stagger forward even though she clearly cannot fight in her condition. The scene forces him to act. He throws a chunk of metal toward the dragon, hoping to distract it, but the attempt does nothing. Realizing the girl's state is worsening by the second, he tosses his own reinforced sword toward her. She catches it with trembling hands and charges the dragon without hesitation. Her movements show the strength of someone used to fighting, and she manages to bring the beast down with the blade he repaired. The other girl rushes toward her companion with relief while Luke approaches cautiously. The injured girl offers him thanks with a weak smile before collapsing. Her body hits the ground hard, and the sight makes the remaining girl panic. Luke examines the wound and determines that her condition is critical. He has no healing magic, and neither does the other girl, so both recognize they have no means to save her. In that moment, Luke remembers what happened to the lichen inside the dungeon. Even though living things resist magic, his repair skill still managed to force a partial decomposition. The thought terrifies him, but he acknowledges that this girl will die if nothing is done. He weighs the risks, decides that trying is better than watching her bleed out, and steadies his hands. He focuses every bit of his will into the repair skill, aiming it at her injuries while repeating to himself that this is the only chance she has. That single decision becomes the moment that changes his life. Luke places his hand above the wounded girl and forces the repair skill to activate. The effect starts slowly as if her body pushes the magic away, but he keeps his focus steady. He reminds himself that giving up now means letting her die in front of him, just like the many adventurers he watched fade away over the years. Those memories push him to hold the activation longer than he ever has. The light of the skill spreads unevenly across her torso, breaking down the damaged flesh and reorganizing it piece by piece. The effort strains him so hard that his vision starts to blur, but he refuses to stop. He has spent 15 years feeling useless, watching stronger people risk their lives while he stood helplessly at the edge. Every loss he ever witnessed returns to him at once. Voices begging not to die, faces twisted in pain, moments where he could do nothing but stare. He realizes that he cannot bear the thought of watching this girl fall the same way. As the decomposition continues, the wound begins to close from within, reconstructing itself according to the pattern of her uninjured body. Our main character then opens his eyes later and struggles to piece together what happened. He remembers using his skill, then losing consciousness immediately afterward, and now he lies on an unfamiliar bed. He studies the room in confusion, trying to understand his surroundings. Sylvia enters at that moment and notices him awake. She informs him that he is in her house, the Spring Leaves Inn, and adds that he has been asleep for nearly half a day, which made her worry. Luke offers an apology right away, believing he needs to leave because he has no money, and he tries to free her from the trouble of hosting him. Sylvia assures him that she does not want payment, and reminds him that he saved their lives. Her gratitude makes him pause as he realizes that she views him as someone who rescued them. He admits that he believes he did almost nothing, yet he thanks her for the kindness. Luke then inquires about the samurai and wonders whether she survived. Sylvia confirms that Sakura recovered completely, which brings him relief. He reflects that he never wants to fall asleep again in a situation where someone he tried to help ends up dying. Sylvia studies him closely and suddenly voices her suspicion that he might be an unusually strong healer. Before Luke can respond, her uncle steps inside and answers on his behalf, stating that Luke is just a third-rate E-rank adventurer whose only skill is repair. Sylvia pushes back, insisting that his repair skill worked impressively. Luke tries to move but feels his strength drain, and he mutters that he feels like he is dying. Sylvia quickly concludes that he is starving, and he admits that he has consumed nothing but water. Shocked, she hurries off and returns with hot food. Luke eats and enjoys the meal while Sylvia remarks on how unexpected his rescue was. She explains that she never imagined someone would reach them at the bottom of the dungeon. Luke assumes she had been near the entrance, but she corrects him and mentions that they were 5 floors deep. Luke realizes they are misunderstanding each other and requests clarification on the exact name of the place where they met. Sylvia states that it was the E-rank dungeon called Sundial Forest and describes, "It is an open-type dungeon shaped like a large amphitheater." Luke becomes certain that he had been inside the Iraq dungeon, the ancient Thousand Years Passage. This leads him to conclude that the two dungeons must have overlapping or linked floors. He then asks what they had been doing so deep inside. Sylvia explains that they were gathering medicinal herbs. Luke thinks this is dangerous for beginners and wonders why no one stopped them. Sylvia clarifies that Sundial Forest was officially recognized as a dungeon only last year, yet people had always entered it for herbs and vegetables. Luke points out that official recognition means monsters should be present, especially since they had encountered a real dragon. Sylvia reveals that neither she nor the guild had any idea a dragon existed there. Luke finds it odd that the guild missed such a thing. He admits he understands how a small monster might escape notice, but a dragon feels impossible to overlook. He reassures her that he does not intend to blame her, since she was also at risk. Sylvia shifts the conversation and asks for his name. Luke introduces himself as Luke from White Wolf Wood, and notes that commoners like them usually use the names of their birthplace or occupation instead of formal family names. Sylvia begins asking what brought him into the dungeon, but before she finishes, she realizes he has already fallen asleep. She gently covers him with a blanket and thanks him quietly. Luke wakes the next morning and heads for a bath. The hot water brings life back into his body, and he feels refreshed. He thinks about Sylvia's explanation that Green Hollow is famous for its hot springs, and the constant access to warm water suddenly makes sense to him. After bathing, he steps outside and feels completely awake. He walks along the street and observes the people moving around. The atmosphere feels peaceful, almost like a town built for rest. Food stalls and small restaurants line the main street, and the whole place feels ideal for someone drained in both body and spirit. Someone calls his name, and he turns to see Sakura approaching. She appears relieved to see him looking well, and mentions that Sylvia told her he had gone out to explore. Luke recognizes her and checks her condition, and she explains that she has recovered fully because of him. He reflects on how strange it is that she encountered a dragon while gathering herbs. Sakura admits that the situation bothers her because, as a warrior in training, relying on someone else feels frustrating to her. She mentions that her favorite katana snapped during the fight and realizes that she is using that as an excuse for her weakness. He asks about her sword, and she presents the 2 broken pieces. He examines them and states that he can fix it easily. Sakura appears relieved because the town has no weapon shop, and she has been stuck without a weapon. Luke assures her that repair work is his specialty. Sylvia arrives soon after and watches them from nearby. Luke notices her staring and feels a bit startled, but she admits she was simply curious and asks whether she may observe. Luke tells her it is fine, though he warns her that it might not be exciting. He also wonders whether her workplace needs her, but she explains she is on a break. Luke studies the sword carefully and lets its information flow into his mind. He observes its strength, its metal composition, the layered steel, and even the reduction in cutting power. He realizes that the ability to read this information evolved from his repair skill. He thinks back to when he touched the berry in the forest and recalls how the details appeared in his mind just like this. He gives this part of the skill a name in his mind: analysis. He understands how it works now. He analyzes the damaged sections, breaks them down mentally, identifies the exact materials needed, and reforms the structure to restore the item. The process feels like the skill has formed its own independent system. Luke finally finishes the repair and announces that the katana is restored. Sakura asks if it is ready and addresses him respectfully, which makes him feel awkward. He decides not to make a big deal out of it. He thinks about her situation and concludes that she likely does not have much money as a trainee warrior. He remembers she saved his life too, so he treats the repair as a gesture of gratitude. Sakura expresses deep thanks. Luke then asks whether she has another source of income. She admits she does not. Luke suggests that she try becoming an adventurer, explaining that adventurers take quests whenever they want, which lets them choose their workload and schedule. Sakura realizes that this fits her situation perfectly. Sylvia mentions that the town has a guild house and that her childhood friend works at the reception desk. She also mentions she has business with the guild, so they decide to go for Sakura's registration. They all head there together. They arrive at the guild house and the receptionist notices them immediately. Sylvia introduces Luke and explains that he has business with the guild. The receptionist, Marita, glances at Luke and jokes about giving discounts to handsome newcomers, which flusters Sylvia. Marita then turns to Sakura, asking if she is there to register as an adventurer. Luke confirms that Sakura wants to join as a novice. Sakura bows and explains that she is inexperienced, but wishes to become an adventurer. Marita reassures her that all new members start as novices. The local danger levels are low, so new adventurers often come here first. Marita hands Sakura the registration form, telling her this is the first step toward joining the guild. Marita begins explaining the adventurer ranking system. There are 6 ranks from F to A, and everyone begins as F. Advancement comes from completing quests, and each higher rank grants access to dungeons of equivalent or lower rank. The higher the rank, the more opportunities become available. Marita also clarifies that party danger levels are determined by the leader's rank, making careful progress important. Sakura listens closely while Luke observes quietly. The receptionist checks a note about the dragon incident and confirms that the novice who defeated a dragon on the 5th dungeon level is present. Luke casually acknowledges his involvement, and Marita starts the paperwork for a cash reward because such a feat must be reported to the main office. Sakura explains that she was only able to slay the dragon because Luke repaired her sword. Marita remarks that cutting down a dragon in one strike is extraordinary, but Sakura insists she is still a beginner. She asks how the reward will be split, and Luke realizes that many adventurers nearby are already watching them. He notes that the attention may complicate things, but decides to proceed. Luke explains that he wants to take a break from adventuring for a while, and is looking for a suitable place in town to open a weapon shop. The suggestion shocks everyone around him. It surprises him too, noticing that even new adventurers cannot ignore a rumor once it spreads. They are all aware now that the person capable of repairing the sword that defeated a dragon is planning to open a shop. He offers to use part of the dragon slaying reward to acquire the building. Marita, Sylvia, and Sakura look at him carefully, processing the unusual plan. Luke assures them that money is not the issue as he can handle the cost, but the building itself is barely standing, little more than a dilapidated ruin. Sylvia asks for clarification, pointing out a location on the outskirts of town, and suggests consulting the mayor. Marita confirms that the structure is almost beyond saving. Our boy declares that it can be fixed. He feels confident because repairing structures falls within his expertise. Sakura immediately insists that he should use her share of the reward as well to restore it, overriding any hesitation. Luke considers the insistence, recognizing that no argument will change her mind. He accepts the contribution, feeling grateful and acknowledging her determination to help. Sylvia proposes framing the payment as an advance for urgent repair services, which allows our boy to accept it professionally. Sakura agrees, treating it as a legitimate transaction and adding a further request. She wants Luke to craft a katana, one strong enough to match the original dragon-slaying sword. Luke thinks it over and agrees. Although accepting her money initially feels awkward, he reminds himself that the arrangement is a formal contract, making her his first customer. They shake hands, sealing the agreement. Luke realizes that this moment marks the beginning of a new chapter in his life. He will step away from the dangerous life of an adventurer and dedicate himself to building the weapon shop. This marks the start of his transition from a wandering adventurer to a craftsman and business owner, using his skill in a controlled and productive way. From that point, Luke takes a hiatus from adventuring and begins the scramble to establish his new life as the owner of White Wolf Arms, preparing to turn his abilities into a sustainable trade while laying the foundation for a safer, more independent future. The group then reaches the building, and our guy stares at it with dismay. Sylvia informs him that the building has been vacant for a while. One day, a strong gale brought a huge tree down on it, leaving everything inside badly damaged. Luke insists they won't know until they try, declaring that he will give it a shot. When Sylvia questions what he means by giving it a shot, he clarifies that he means repairing it. He admits he has never tried using the skill on something this large but expresses cautious optimism. His thoughts reveal that the repair's target will be the entire building, and that he will use magic to compensate for sections that have rotted away. The girls watch in shock as Luke activates the repair skill. Cracks begin sealing themselves, and Sakura feels stunned as the building restores itself before her eyes. Sylvia watches in amazement, telling him he restored it perfectly and calling him incredible. She notices him huffing and checks whether he is all right. He responds that he is finished, his thoughts acknowledging that restoring an entire house consumes enormous power. He recognizes that a weapon shop needs inventory to sell and remarks that he cannot afford to wear himself out already. Sylvia immediately offers to clean the place at the very least, warning that if he handles everything alone, he will collapse again. Sakura adds that she wants to help as well. Luke accepts, apologizing for putting them to work. Sylvia begins by opening a box of weapons, stating she will start with the shop's stock. She mentions that she bought them cheaply from the guild. Luke acknowledges this, admitting that he knows it looks like a pile of junk, broken weapons and battered armor. He activates the repair skill on them, explaining that to him, this is treasure. He demonstrates as one item becomes indistinguishable from a brand new sword. Sylvia and the others grasp his strategy at once. Repairing damaged weapons costs far less than stocking entirely new ones. Luke confirms their understanding, explaining that this is exactly why a weapon shop suits him. He adds that they will need an eye-catching featured display next. When Sylvia asks what he means by eye-catching, Luke elaborates that he used the sword that slew the dragon for publicity. Without items like that, customers will leave disappointed. Sylvia questions whether he will be able to make more swords that impressive. Luke admits that the ones going on display will be replicas. He explains that he disintegrated the original dungeon material and ground it into fine powder. Creating another sword of that caliber with such a small pouch remains impossible. Sakura asks whether it is the same material he used before. Luke confirms it, explaining that the substance dramatically increases blade strength. He calls his acquisition method a trade secret, then activates the repair skill again and applies it to another sword. Sylvia observes its beauty, noting that its shine carries a different quality from ordinary weapons. Luke announces he will finish repairing the rest, thinking that once preparations are complete, he will need to plan how to secure more materials. Sakura expresses surprise, admitting she never imagined this would be his path with the guild. Luke responds that he gave the idea a great deal of thought, then poses a question. He points out that there is already a weapon shop in town, so what new adventurers truly need here? Sylvia answers that they need weapons and armor. Luke remarks that she comes from a merchant family. Sylvia shares that her grandmother always taught her to find gaps in the market. Luke's thoughts reveal that he has never told them what happened before they met. Sylvia wonders why he was not an adventurer earlier, especially given his apparent talent for restoration. Luke explains that he only realized the full potential of his skill very recently, then recounts everything about the hero. Both girls react with shock, calling it cruel and awful. Sylvia's thoughts reveal an urge to slap him across his evil face. Luke realizes that if he mentions the man as a hero, their anger will only worsen. Sakura declares she would have cut him down on the spot. Luke explains that the reason he clung to being an adventurer was longing. His thoughts drift to childhood, when parties of adventurers passed through his village. Hearing tales of their exploits planted that yearning inside him. He acknowledges that many stories were exaggerated, yet even so, he could not abandon the dream. His parents dismissed the idea as foolish, and his rebellion eventually drove him to leave his village. That is why he remained an adventurer for so long, even as a perpetual E-ranker. Sakura asks whether he ever regretted it. Luke responds that he stayed because he genuinely enjoyed it. That final quest became a wake-up call and a chance to start anew. He acknowledges that he owes that mission his awakened ability, and now he can live quietly as a weapon seller. Sakura agrees enthusiastically, urging them to work hard to prepare the shop. Luke plans to order the sign, and once it arrives, he will begin repairing the remaining stock. Just then, a boy arrives and asks whether Luke saved the girl from the Spring Leaves Inn. Luke confirms it was him. The man explains that he knows the inn's family well and hands over a box of hot stew, offering it to the house. He mentions that many townsfolk are eagerly awaiting the shop's opening and wishes Luke good luck before departing. Luke asks whether he truly wants nothing in return, but the man insists it is their treat. Luke reflects that during his adventuring days, no one expected much from him or thanked him at all. The feeling is not unpleasant, and he eats. Nearby, Sakura interacts with several children. She tells them honestly that sword arts are not meant for display. The children persist, insisting that no one will mind and asking her to show them more, calling swordplay cool. She relents, agreeing to just one more demonstration. She performs a strike that shatters an object into fragments, leaving the children stunned. Luke watches from a distance, equally shocked. His thoughts note 2 slashes executed in an instant. Achieving that demands not only speed but refined technique. He concludes she must be a skilled swordswoman. Sakura declares that it was easy for her. Luke's thoughts comment on what happened to sword arts are not for show. The children respond enthusiastically. She notices Luke and asks how long he has been there. He admits he arrived when she mentioned sword arts not being for display. She explains that in her homeland, public demonstrations are discouraged, so praise like this is rare. Luke responds, noting her embarrassment, that he understands. She was simply excited to perform. He adds that several stall owners gave him stew for free as well. She thanks him and tastes it, declaring it delicious. Luke observes how much she enjoys eating. Her thoughts wonder whether it was that obvious, and she admits she has suffered one humiliation after another since meeting him. Luke disagrees, remarking that he finds it endearing. Staying composed matters, but so does letting go. She thanks him for saying so, explaining that her hometown is extremely strict, so she tends to overindulge in freedom here. Luke asks whether she is a warrior in training and whether she plans to stay in Green Hollow for long. She reveals that she is returning home briefly and will leave tomorrow. Luke expresses surprise at how soon that is. She explains that she hopes to make this town her base, but first she must retrieve something. When he asks what she left behind, she reveals it is a special material she wants him to use to forge a sword. She will bring it back herself, assuring him not to worry. He promises to surprise her with the best shop she has ever seen. She responds that she is genuinely looking forward to it. Later, outside the shop, a worker asks Luke where he wants the sign placed. Luke, along with Sylvia, confirms the location is perfect. The worker asks whether the shop's name comes from his birthplace, mentioning White Wolf Woods if memory serves. He confirms this, admitting he could not think of anything better. He adds that he has been meaning to thank her for all her help, expressing sincere gratitude. Sylvia responds by reminding him that he saved her life. She suggests they simply enjoy the fact that so many people are eagerly awaiting the opening. He agrees, acknowledging that this is where everything begins. The worker announces the sign is finished, marking the end of preparations. Luke and Sylvia stand outside the shop and welcome everyone, announcing the grand opening of White Wolf Arms. Luke later reflects on how quickly he's adapted to running the shop. Despite opening not long ago, business flows steadily and dealing with customers has become second nature. A customer approaches, inquiring about swords available for 1 florin. Luke shows him the selection, confirming that 1 florin covers more than enough for their regular iron swords. The customer expresses relief at the reasonable price. He thanks him for the purchase as the customer leaves satisfied. Sylvia emerges from the back, commenting on how busy things remain as usual. Luke greets her warmly, noticing she carries something. She explains it's a present from Marita, who runs the bar as a side business. Everyone in town feels overjoyed because they've grown significantly more powerful thanks to the materials harvested from the dragon corpse. He examines the bottle, realizing this gift serves as both a thank you and a belated shop-warming present combined. Sylvia shifts the conversation, curious whether he's sold any of the featured replica swords yet. Luke admits no sales so far. The replicas aren't exactly priced to move quickly. For now, they function purely as decoration since most people can't afford to pay that much. Sylvia points out these are only replicas, suggesting he could charge even more for the actual sword. Luke agrees completely, estimating he could probably charge several sovereigns for the real thing. Sylvia's eyes widen at the mention of multiple sovereigns. She notes that amount equals what ordinary folk earn in an entire year. Luke explains he can't make another sword like that one easily anyway. The problem lies in needing to return to the thousand-year passage to Hell to gather more of that unique material. However, entering requires an air anchor leading the party, making the whole endeavor pretty much impossible for now. He concludes he can't go collect more material and has no intention of selling the original sword anywhere either. Sylvia agrees it seems like a bit of a waste, but understands the situation. Luke points out that adventurers rarely have that kind of cash to drop on a single sword anyway. The shop door suddenly swings open, and two men enter. One addresses Luke formally, asking if this establishment is famous for the Dragon Slayer sword. The other waits silently. Luke confirms this is the place, but hesitates. The buyer smiles, expressing strong interest in purchasing the sword if Luke has it available. Luke directs them to similar blades in stock over the display. The buyer dismisses these options, clarifying he wants the original sword, not poor-quality replicas. Luke feels caught off guard by the direct request. He explains carefully that the original hasn't been put up for sale. The buyer laughs, asking if Luke wants to keep it as a souvenir. He acknowledges understanding that sentiment, but insists he has specific reasons for wanting that particular blade. The buyer gestures to his companion, who promptly places a stack of gold sovereigns on the counter. Other customers in the shop freeze, staring at the display of wealth. Luke's mind races. 5 sovereigns just sitting there. He wonders who this person actually is. The buyer studies our boy's reaction and decides the offer isn't sufficient. He raises his hand again, and his companion produces even more coins, stacking them higher. The buyer asks pleasantly if this amount allows them to reach an agreement now. After the men leave, the shop door slams shut. Luke exhales heavily, commenting on how exhausting that interaction was. Sylvia immediately begins counting the coins spread across the counter. She reaches 5, 6, 7 gold sovereigns total. Luke doubts those men were adventurers, and no adventurer shells out this much cash so casually. They might have been knights or noble envoys based on their bearing and resources. He notes that at the very least, the buyer seemed to be a real connoisseur, since he saw right through the quality of the replicas instantly. Sylvia agrees, recognizing the man definitely wasn't ordinary. She wonders aloud why someone like that would come all the way to Green Hollow. Before they can discuss further, Sakura arrives at the shop, greeting them cheerfully and mentioning it's been a while. Both our dude and Sylvia light up at seeing her. Sylvia rushes forward, expressing how tired she got of waiting and how much she missed her friend. Sakura apologizes for taking quite a while to get home. Sylvia mentions she's actually back earlier than expected and asks if she brought the material. Sakura confirms she did, explaining she really wanted to show it to Luke, so she came straight here. Sylvia notes the good timing since she's about to break for lunch, and asks if she can take a look once they have eaten. Sakura agrees enthusiastically, saying she'd really appreciate that. They settle down for a meal together. Sakura tastes the food and declares Luke's cooking the best she's ever had. Sylvia mentions Luke has even been hired to restore some of the buildings in town. Sakura responds with amazement, expressing how astounded she feels by how much the place has improved beyond her imagination. The shop also seems to be getting a lot of customers. Luke confirms business comes from people who aren't adventurers as well. Sylvia credits this success to how well he fixed up the ramshackle old place. Luke suggests the shop itself serves as his biggest advertisement. Sakura expresses confidence that, from the looks of things, he'll earn back his startup fees in no time. Luke reveals he's actually earned most of that money back already. Sylvia interjects excitedly, reminding Sakura about the sword used to defeat the dragon. It just sold for 10 sovereigns. Sakura's shock shows clearly on her face as she questions who on earth those people were. Sylvia admits she doesn't know, speculating that rich people often want weapons with a lot of prestige. Maybe that explains the deal. Sakura comments that someone could be set for life with that amount. Sylvia laughs, noting that's taking austerity a little too far. Luke agrees they're all just making guesses since they can't know the truth now. He suggests they talk about Sakura's blade instead. Sakura produces the material, which sparkles brilliantly in the light. She explains this is what she wants him to use for making her katana. Her people call it Haihiro Kon. Luke admits he's never heard of it before. Sylvia observes it looks like a gemstone, but recognizes it as metal. Sakura confirms this, revealing that one of the goals of her journey was finding someone capable of forging a katana from this material. Luke asks if no one in her hometown could do it. Sakura explains sadly that not even in the East does the knowledge exist anymore. The techniques have been lost. No new armor or tools can be made from this material now. Luke examines the material closely, asking if she's certain she wants to entrust something so valuable to him. It's such a precious material. Sakura responds with conviction that there's no one she'd rather trust it to. Luke accepts the responsibility but warns that this will be complex and might take a little time. Sakura asks what he means by complex. Luke explains the process simply. His repair skill uses the memory of an object's original shape to make it whole again. Since repair is his only skill, he can't just make a sword from raw ore right away. Sylvia follows the logic, understanding that repair only restores an object to its original state. Sakura grasps the problem. He can't create a blade from metal ore alone. He clarifies it's not impossible, strictly speaking. If he recomposes half the ore bit by bit into an existing katana until it learns the shape, then decomposes the katana and the rest of the ore together, he can recompose it all at once. This method would create a 100% pure high hurricane blade. He admits it's kind of a cheat workaround. Sakura asks excitedly if he can really do it, if it's actually going to be possible for real. Luke responds that the theory sounds solid, though he's never actually tried it before. Sakura urges him to do it as soon as he can. She hands over her katana, requesting he use it first to make her a 50% blade, then afterward remake it to 100%. Luke accepts the challenge, noting that if this is what she wants, he'd better not fall short of her expectations. He raises his hand over the materials, announcing he'll try a 50-50 blend of the original katana and the High Hero Kone first. Both women watch in amazement as the process unfolds. Sylvia comments on the pretty color. Sakura marvels at how the blade glows pink as cherry blossoms. Luke holds up the finished result, observing how combining it with regular metal creates this light and striking color. Sakura asks if she can take it outside for a while. Luke agrees, but reminds her to watch out for other customers. After Sakura leaves, Luke remarks that she doesn't look at it, but she's a big kid at heart. Sylvia teases that this observation makes him sound like a dad. Luke protests, asking if she's calling him old. Outside, Sakura raises her finger and fire emerges from her fingertip. Luke watches through the window, impressed that she can use fire magic. Sakura explains it's still only a low-level skill, so she can't use it for direct attacks. However, items made from High Hurricane reportedly conduct fire and amplify its intensity. By channeling her magic through the blade, she can test if the process worked properly. Luke finds this amazing and suggests testing it on something. As fire builds up along the sword, he points to a chunk of wood nearby but warns her to watch out for the shop window. Sakura swings the blade, and the fire-enhanced attack launches forward, obliterating the wood chunk at a distance. Sylvia watches in shock. People gathering around the attack area also stare in disbelief. Sakura thanks Luke profusely, calling the result incredible. Sylvia hesitates before pointing out that Sakura just called that a low-level skill. Luke agrees, realizing he might have just made the most absurdly overpowered weapon in history. He wonders what would happen if someone used a higher-level fire skill with this blade. Just how strong could it become? Even a short time ago, he never would have imagined being capable of making something like this. The whole situation feels so unreal that someone like him could craft a weapon of this caliber. Sylvia comments this is exactly what she'd expect from a sword Luke made. Sakura looks absolutely thrilled with the result. She requests that next time he make her a short sword as well, since she wants to dual-wield it with her katana. Luke agrees readily, thinking to himself that he never thought he'd have friends who appreciate his skills like this. Later, a customer approaches from behind, mentioning he'll come back if anything breaks again. Luke assures him he'll be waiting for the business. He glances at his to-do list, confirming that's all of today's jobs completed. Creative energy burns through him so intensely that he can't sit still. Maybe he'll head back to the shop and fix some more weapons. Speaking of weapons, didn't Sakura mention wanting a short sword? Perhaps he can make it now and surprise her with it. He might try changing the ore ratio a little while working on it too. Two knights suddenly appear behind him. They address him formally, asking if he's Luke of the White Wolf Wood and requesting a moment of his time. Luke's nerves spike immediately at their official presence. The knight addresses Luke, introducing himself as part of the Order of the Silver Wings. Our main character, unfamiliar with the organization, smiles politely and mentions he typically handles repair requests at his shop. The knight grows irritated, questioning how long Luke plans to play ignorant and warning that his patience wears thin. Luke stares back, genuinely confused about what the knight means. The knight notices Luke looking away and grabs his shirt, demanding he stop underestimating him and calling him a low-life criminal. Another knight intervenes from behind, urging his companion, whose name is Garnet, to ease up. This second knight, Felix, warns Garnet that aggressive interrogation only distorts the truth. Garnet snaps back, but Felix reminds him of the chain of command, threatening to report his insubordination to Lord Carmine. This mention immediately changes Garnet's demeanor as he begs Felix to keep his brother out of the situation and apologizes to Luke for the rough treatment. Felix removes his helmet, revealing himself as the vice commander of the Order, and requests Luke accompany them for an important discussion. Luke questions what happens if he refuses. Felix explains matter-of-factly that refusal constitutes obstruction, which means they would simply force him to comply anyway. Seeing no real choice, Luke agrees to continue the conversation inside his shop, since their presence attracts too much attention on the street. Sylvia appears from inside the shop, clearly alarmed by the commotion. She approaches Luke, demanding to know what's happening after hearing the shouting. Luke admits he has no clear idea either, though the situation obviously doesn't look good. He tries reassuring her that they're just going inside to talk. Sylvia insists she can't possibly stay calm when customers are already whispering among themselves. She announces she's coming along. Luke nervously asks Felix if this creates a problem. Felix allows it, explaining she'll need to give consent to serve as Luke's official witness, since she seems quite concerned about him. Once inside, Felix gets straight to business, mentioning they're aware of what transpired in the dungeon. Garnet requests Luke describe each member of Hero Falcon's party. Luke seems puzzled by the request, so Felix clarifies they just want his personal impressions. Luke begins recounting what he knows. Falcon tended toward overconfidence, and whenever pride caused him to make mistakes, he'd rely on his numerous skills to fix problems. Julia the Knight was Falcon's childhood friend and lover who followed his every command, though she only ever challenged him when it involved other women. The white mage Blanc was the one who proposed abandoning Messi and generally rubbed people the wrong way. As for the last member, Luke admits he struggles to say much. Felix prompts him about the white mage Noir, asking if they had some kind of conflict. Luke clarifies it's actually the opposite. Noir had such minimal presence that he honestly can't describe what she was like. Felix acknowledges this information before Luke turns the question around, asking why they need to know about the party members. Felix decides to reveal the truth directly. Falcon and his entire party are currently missing in action, and the Order of the Silver Wings is investigating their whereabouts. Luke expresses surprise, mentioning he hasn't heard anything about this, and previously informed the guild they were probably still inside the dungeon. Felix confirms they're aware of that report, then drops another bombshell. The fact that Luke left the dungeon without his party has led to accusations of foul play. He explains that the ministers sponsoring Falcon have made serious claims. They believe Hero Falcon died due to Luke's betrayal, and they demand he be interrogated for details. Sylvia immediately stands, protesting that the accusation is absurd and completely out of character for Luke. Luke sits frozen in shock. Felix calmly tells Sylvia to settle down, acknowledging her feelings but asking her to let him finish. He continues explaining that the ministers also believe Luke stole the hero's weapon, the Dragon Slayer's sword that was specifically assigned to Falcon for retrieving. Luke starts mentioning the sword has already been dealt with, but Bradford cuts him off, realizing Luke was the one who melted it down. The revelation clicks for Luke. That's how the Order had the funds for this investigation. It was a politically assigned mission. Felix confirms the minister's reasoning about the sword proved false, but now a different problem has emerged. The sword Luke made contains mithril. Both Felix and Sylvia react with shock to this revelation. Sylvia asks what mithril even means. Felix explains it's an extremely precious metal with terrifyingly high magic affinity. Gathering it requires royal palace permission, and selling it without authorization can result in the death penalty in the worst cases. Sylvia gasps, pointing out that Luke repaired the sword using material from the dungeon walls. Luke confirms this, explaining the caves must be composed of this substance, at least partially. He couldn't properly analyze it because he'd never encountered that particular metal before. Felix acknowledges that since Luke's production of a mithril weapon wasn't intentional, he can't be charged with a crime. However, there's a catch. If Luke truly made the sword from the dungeon wall, no one could have known about the mithril vein beforehand. To prove this, Luke must designate part of the dungeon wall with witnesses from the Order present. Luke agrees, reasoning that if this clears up any suspicion, he's willing to cooperate. Still, he wonders aloud how Felix could possibly think he'd betray Falcon in the first place. Felix clarifies that only the ministers hold that belief. He smiles, noting that in terms of ability alone, betrayal seems impossible since Luke holds E-rank status with only a repair skill. Luke points out that the guard outside, Garnet, certainly seemed convinced of his guilt. Felix explains that Garnet harbors intense hatred for mithril bootleggers, which probably explains his hostile attitude. Luke accepts this explanation, and Felix confirms they'll escort him to the dungeon to collect rock samples from the wall. Later, outside the shop, Garnet approaches Luke with a completely different demeanor, smiling and expressing how much he's counting on Luke today. Felix seems taken aback by the sudden shift. Luke shakes hands with him, thinking how bizarre this total attitude change feels. The kindness seems even weirder compared to earlier, and while shaking hands, Garnet squeezes Luke's hand painfully hard. He leans in, warning Luke that today they'll expose his lies completely. Sakura suddenly arrives, and Garnet immediately tells her to back off, declaring that outsiders have no say in official business. Sakura counters that she's not an outsider since Felix gave her permission to accompany them. Luke apologizes to Sakura for making her act as both bodyguard and guide. She responds cheerfully that she's happy to help. Garnet smirks, making a snide comment about typical E-rankers always needing protection. Felix immediately reprimands him, reminding Garnet they've already discussed this behavior, and threatens to report him to Lord Carmine if he oversteps again. Garnet relents, claiming he'll be serious from now on. Luke casually mentions that Garnet should listen to his boss, who also happens to be his big brother. Garnet seems surprised Luke figured out the relationship. Luke explains that when Felix threatened to report him to Carmine, Garnet responded by saying to leave his brother out of it. Luke adds that being a perceptive E-ranker means he's quite good at listening for useful information. Garnet dismisses this, claiming it's not an actual skill. Luke continues, piecing together that since the vice commander reports to the commander and that's Garnet's boss, everything makes sense now. Garnet seems baffled that Luke remembers all these tiny details. A knight approaches and announces the vice commander is ready to depart. Luke observes Bradford, noting how incredibly tense the man appears. They arrive at the dragon remains in Sundial Forest. Luke takes in the scene, noting how many adventurers wear such light armor in a place where a dragon appeared. He wonders whether they're courageous or foolhardy. He turns to Garnet, asking if he's wearing full armor because he's scared of the dragon. Garnet shouts defensively that he's not afraid. Luke moves closer, reassuring him there hasn't been a single eyewitness report of another dragon. Garnet insists again he's not scared, and demands Luke stop mocking him. Felix calls Garnet's name, and one of the other knights observes that it almost looks like Luke and Garnet could become friends. He guides them to the dungeon entrance, identifying it as the 1,000-year path to hell. Felix notes it really does connect with the other dungeon they investigated, and mentions they'll need to examine the lower levels as well. Luke recalls there was a wall near the bottom of the steps and leads them there. Felix confirms this is the wall Luke used for the repair, noting that at first glance it appears to be ordinary stone. However, since it's part of the dungeon, the wall should be virtually indestructible. He asks Garnet to test it. Garnet agrees, turning to Luke and declaring that if he knocks the wall down, it proves Luke is a fraud. Luke responds calmly that he's well aware of what's at stake. Garnet activates his skill and swings his weapon at the wall with full force, but the wall doesn't break. Luke asks what Garnet thinks now. Garnet admits the similarity to rock is only superficial. Inside, it's like a cluster of metal. Not even a hero could break through this material. Felix tells Luke to proceed. Luke positions himself in front of the wall, thinking how this takes him back to the worst month of his life. He just wants to decompose some of the wall and leave. Our guy activates his skill and places his hand on the wall. Immediately, cracks spread across the surface. Felix watches in shock as Luke breaks the dungeon wall so easily. The wall crumbles apart. Luke then demonstrates recomposing the rubble, explaining this is exactly how he made the sword that slew the dragon. He had no idea the material was mithril or anything unusual. Felix asks Bradford to collect some of the debris. He then requests Luke dismantle more of the wall at different points. Luke questions whether this is totally necessary, admitting he'd rather not go any deeper. Felix explains they can't be certain of every wall's composition, so they need samples from multiple sides. Garnet teases Luke, asking what's wrong and whether he's scared, suggesting he'll abandon them the same way he supposedly abandoned his party. Felix immediately tells Garnet to stop, then addresses Luke more gently. He understands Luke's hesitation but would really appreciate his help, since they're doing this for Luke's sake. Luke acknowledges he knows this and reluctantly agrees. After collecting samples, Luke looks at the bag of metal pieces and expresses relief that they finally have enough and can leave. Garnet complains about how dark, narrow, and depressing the place was, questioning how Luke survived 2 weeks down there. Luke points out he wasn't down there for fun. Sakura smiles and tries to lighten the mood. Felix explains they'll take the medal back to have it appraised, though the results may take some time. He promises to contact Luke as soon as he hears anything. Luke thanks him and confirms he'll be waiting. Luke suddenly has an idea, suggesting Felix take some dragon bones as souvenirs for the other knights. Sakura agrees it's a great idea. Garnet faces away, muttering that he doesn't care what they do, and announces he's heading home. He then asks Luke mockingly if he even remembers the way back, calling him annoying. In that instant, Luke senses something wrong. Before anyone can react, a massive dragon hand crashes down, striking Garnet directly in the face. Luke shouts in shock, asking what the hell is happening. Garnet's armor flies off from the impact. The dragon releases a deafening growl while Felix screams Garnet's name in horror. Just then, a swarm of wyverns suddenly descends from the sky. People scatter in terror, screaming for help, and shouting that they stand no chance against these creatures. Felix calls out Bradford's name urgently. Bradford responds immediately, activating his chain of binding technique. The chains shoot out and wrap around the dragon, forcing the massive beast to crash down. Luke watches in amazement, impressed that Bradford managed to take down so many creatures with just a single skill. Sakura launches herself into the air, activating Swift Dash as she soars upward. She lands directly on one of the wyverns and draws her sword, striking at the creature while maintaining her balance. During the fight, another dragon appears behind her without warning. Luke shouts desperately, trying to warn her to look out. Felix reacts faster, swooping in with his skill to save her from the attack. Sakura acknowledges her debt to him gratefully. Felix observes the giant dragon before them, noting this one appears different from the others, more dangerous. He announces that he and Bradford will provide support while leaving the finishing blow to Luke. He instructs Luke to get himself to a safe distance. Luke agrees outwardly, but internally he beats himself up over his pathetic state. Even though his skill has evolved, when it comes to actual battle, he remains completely useless. Still, he decides he must do whatever he can in the moment. His attention shifts to Garnet lying injured on the ground. Luke notices the heavy blood loss but confirms Garnet still breathes. He rushes over, calling out to check if Garnet can hear him. As Luke examines the injuries more closely, his stomach drops. Garnet's face has been almost completely crushed by the dragon's attack. Luke wonders if there's still time to help, thinking if he ignores the armor and focuses on healing the body directly, he might have a chance. A sound behind him interrupts his thoughts. Luke realizes the dragon's breath attack reaches all the way out here. If they don't move immediately, they'll be caught in the direct range of the assault. Even if Luke manages to escape, Garnet won't survive. Luke stares at the situation, recognizing this as a sink or swim moment. He draws his sword, formulating a desperate plan. If he makes the dungeon wall his repair target and uses the earth as raw material to compensate, he might be able to pull something off. Our dude activates his skill immediately, thinking bitterly about how someone who was abandoned for being useless now faces the choice of abandoning someone else. That thought drives him forward. He focuses intensely as he uses the skill, commenting that the result isn't bad, considering he's never attempted something like this before. Luke places his hand on Garnet, muttering that Garnet better be ready to apologize for every single time she bit his head off. He concentrates, willing Garnet to come back. The healing takes effect and Garnet's form begins to restore from its injured state. However, Luke suddenly senses something unusual. One of Garnet's chest plates has been destroyed, revealing her actual body. The shocking realization hits him. Garnet is a woman. As she regains consciousness, Garnet's eyes snap open. She mistakes Luke for the dragon and slams him away, jumping to her feet and declaring she's going to kill that bastard. Our boy calls her name urgently, begging her not to try moving yet. He explains he fixed her wounds but couldn't restore the blood she lost. Garnet reaches up to check her injuries, then notices her exposed chest. She covers herself with her hand, realizing what happened and becoming extremely shy. She acknowledges that Luke saw everything. Luke admits he couldn't help it and had no idea she was a woman. Garnet turns away from him, clearly embarrassed. Luke offers to repair her armor, instructing her to just turn around so he can fix it from behind. While working, Luke's thoughts race. Garnet can indeed be both a man's or woman's name, but no one would ever guess that under all that armor exists a woman's body. Once Garnet covers herself properly, Luke announces the repair should hold for now. He points out they're not on the front line anyway, so they can just wait for Sakura and the others to finish off the dragon. Garnet surprises him by asking why he doesn't question why she was hiding her gender. Our boy responds casually, assuming she doesn't want people to know for her own reasons. If that's the case, he won't force her to explain. Garnet clenches her fist and shouts his name. She bows her head, acknowledging she owes him an apology. She admits she was pretty rude to him before. Luke suggests it was because she thought he was smuggling mithril. Garnet seems caught off guard, asking who told him that. She figures it must have been Felix, complaining that he always sticks his nose where it doesn't belong. Luke reiterates that she doesn't have to tell him anything she doesn't want to share. Garnet responds that she won't make excuses. If her mother knew she was still clinging to her pride like this, she'd be furious. Bowing deeply, Garnet expresses her most sincere gratitude for healing her. She admits she would be dead if it weren't for Luke. Luke smiles, commenting that he had no idea she could be so forthright. He declares everything is water under the bridge now. Even him seeing something he shouldn't have seen. Garnet grabs him roughly, demanding he forget about what he saw no matter what. Luke quickly clarifies he wasn't talking about that. He meant her face being exposed. They both hear a sound in the distance. Luke recognizes it as the sound of the dragon being defeated. Garnet seems frustrated she didn't get the chance to pay the dragon back herself. Luke suggests they head back to meet up with the others. He extends his hand forward, asking if she can stand. Garnet rises on her own, insisting she can stand just fine without help. Luke points out that her helmet is gone and asks if she's okay meeting up with the others like that. Garnet explains not to worry since Felix and Bradford have seen her face before. Luke realizes she's sulking about something and pieces it together. Neither of them knows she's a woman. Garnet confirms this, explaining their order has a stupid antiquated rule that only allows men to join. Luke's thoughts click into place, remembering Felix previously referred to Garnet using male pronouns. Garnet explains she's been pushing the idea that she's the commander's little brother to maintain the deception. Luke can't reveal this secret to anyone. Luke reflects internally that her reason for wanting to be in the order must be significant if she's going so far as to hide her gender. While he admits curiosity, he recognizes it's none of his business. As they walk, Garnet suddenly stops. Luke asks what she sees. She points ahead, asking if he notices what she's seeing. Luke follows her gaze and spots a huge hole in front of them. He didn't notice anything like that on their way here. Garnet wonders if this might be the reason for everything that happened. Luke looks closer, noticing ivy covering much of the area. He figures the ivy was probably covering the hole when they passed through earlier. Garnet's expression changes as a terrible thought occurs to her. She brings up the dragon that appeared in Sundial Forest, trailing off as the implication sinks in. Luke recalls something gigantic bursting out while they were heading down into the cave. He agrees that most likely the dragon came out of this hole, and the guild wouldn't have noticed the hole hidden there either. Garnet urgently states they really need to warn everyone. She suddenly notices something strange. The hole starts closing. Luke recognizes this as a pretty common trap mechanism for dungeons. However, if the mechanism extends out here, that means the dragon must be part of the trap itself. Garnet asks if he thinks someone is controlling the dragon. Luke admits he doesn't want to consider that possibility, but his mind works through the logic. If he's right, there must be a switch somewhere that activates the trap. Luke spots something near the closing hole, a person lying on the ground. He calls out that there's someone right by the hole entrance. Garnet realizes the danger, warning him to wait. Luke moves forward urgently, insisting they need to check. Garnet reluctantly agrees, but demands he come back quickly. Luke reaches the woman and crouches down, asking if she's okay. The woman stirs and rises up slightly. Luke feels relief that she's still conscious. As he gets a better look at her face, recognition strikes him. It's Noir. Luke asks if it's really her. She responds weakly with his name. Luke questions what she's doing out here, mentioning he heard the rest of the party hasn't returned from the dungeon. Noir suddenly fills with fear and throws herself at Luke, hugging him desperately. She repeats apologies over and over, crying hysterically. Luke tries to calm her down, asking what happened to the others. Through her trembling and tears, Noir manages to convey that everyone is in the dungeon. She shakes uncontrollably as she tries to continue. A sinister voice cuts through, commanding Noir to keep quiet unless she wants to suffer. Noir immediately collapses to the ground. Luke reacts with shock, asking what just happened. He checks on her frantically, begging her to hang in there. The voice speaks again, declaring that no one will be able to free her from this curse. Noir then slowly opens her eyes and finds 3 of them standing nearby. Luke checks if she is conscious, and she pushes herself upright with effort. She recognizes Luke immediately, but her gaze lingers on Felix and she asks for introduction. He introduces himself as Felix from the Order of the Silver Wings. He explains that he has been sent by the king to investigate the disappearance of Hero Falcon and asks Noir to explain what happened to her. Instead of answering, Noir suddenly starts pulling at her shirt. Sakura reacts instantly, in confusion. Noir turns her back to them, revealing a massive black mark spread across her skin. The sight makes Sakura recoil, demanding to know what that thing is and whether it is some kind of demonic curse. Our boy remembers rumors he has heard about spells cast by demons and similar beings to control others. Felix concludes that the curse blocks its host from sharing certain information. Luke immediately understands why Noir was unable to speak about what happened earlier. Felix then turns to Luke and asks if he can remove the curse using his repair skill. The request leaves Luke confused. Felix continues, admitting that Noir's role in Luke's betrayal cannot be forgiven, but this is not the moment to dwell on resentment. With the mysterious hole in Sundial Forest, Noir's sudden recovery, and the curse itself, danger may already be approaching the town. Luke steps behind Noir, recalling how his repair skill changed while he was trapped in the dungeon. He can now decompose on living creatures to heal them. He speaks to Noir, telling her that he understands what is happening and that he can remove the curse. Before he can act, Curse speaks through Noir, threatening that it could tear her apart just as easily. Sakura immediately moves toward Luke, alarmed, but Felix stops her with a raised arm. Luke steels himself and places his hands on Noir's back, activating his skill. Instantly, shock runs through him. The black mark reacts, moving as if alive and wrapping around his hand. Luke realizes this is no ordinary curse. It has actual life. Sakura recognizes it in horror and identifies it as a mimic. She explains that mimics usually lie in wait disguised as treasure chests or even entire dungeon rooms, but she has never seen one take the form of a curse mark. Luke feels the creature draining his magic while holding his hand captive, and he understands that it is trying to consume him. He refuses to let that happen. Our main character increases the output of his skill, forming a clear plan. He repairs his own arm at the same time as he decomposes the mimic. He pours all the magic he has into the process, mocking the creature and challenging it on whether it likes the taste of his power. Noir suddenly collapses forward, falling face first to the ground. When Luke looks again, the curse mark is completely gone. His thoughts settle on a simple truth that an adventurer survives by never losing sight of what matters. Getting distracted by meaningless things can be fatal. Sakura and Felix both let out relieved breaths. Luke calls out to Noir, telling her to get up. With an unknown danger drawing closer to the town, learning the truth becomes the highest priority. Whatever resentment exists between them can wait. He firmly orders her to tell them everything she knows and to leave nothing out. Noir begins her account. She explains that the day after abandoning our boy, the party reached the deepest level of the dungeon. Falcon announced that this must be the place where they were supposed to chant the password. He spoke the ancient words, and the door before them began to rumble. Falcon then told Noir to examine it with her magic, and she agreed. Beyond the door, Noir discovered a cavern so vast it seemed impossible. Along its outer edges were enormous mines where dwarves worked as slaves under the control of dark elves. The inner lands were barren and undeveloped, scattered with dungeons across the desolate terrain. Falcon noticed a small town, located about halfway across the expanse, and declared that was where they would find the old man they were looking for. Noir adds that 2 months earlier the dwarven chieftain had begged the king for help. In response, the king sent Falcon and his party on a reconnaissance mission. Blanc suggested crossing the inner lands directly while avoiding detection by the dark elves at all costs. Along the way, Julia stopped in front of a massive door, questioning its purpose. Given its size, she reasoned it was not meant for humans and asked Falcon whether the password would work on it as well. Falcon decided to try anyway, chanting the password again, but nothing happened. He shrugged and suggested they leave it alone and move on. The following day, they finally reached the town, which appeared to be inhabited entirely by dwarves. Noir cast an invisibility spell on the party, and they advanced carefully. A dwarf elder suddenly called out from above, welcoming them home and saying they had waited a long time for their arrival. Dark elves then appeared from nowhere, revealing that the party had been watched the entire time. The elder pleaded with them, explaining how his people were enslaved and worked to exhaustion, begging the party to save them. Falcon responded dismissively, saying he understood the situation. They needed the party to defeat the evil overlord. He added confidently that it would be easy. Outwardly, Noir said nothing, but inwardly she questioned how they were supposed to defeat an evil overlord when their mission was only to survey the area. The chieftain praised Falcon's brave words. Blanc leaned toward Noir and asked what was wrong with her sister. Noir brushed it off, claiming it was nothing, though a deep sense of dread had already taken root. The chieftain promised to show them a secret path to the Dark Elves' fortress the next day, and invited them to rest in town for the night. While everyone slept, Noir heard noises. She quickly recognized them as Falcon and Julia making out. She reflected critically that they must have been together since before the party even formed, but doing this so close to enemy territory struck her as reckless. She also knew they were planning to storm the Overlord's keep, first thing in the morning. Sitting in the darkness, Noir thought about how perfectly Falcon embodied arrogance. She remembered Luke warning about the hero's hubris. Blanc appeared beside her, smiling knowingly and asking if Noir enjoyed listening. Noir denied it immediately, saying she was just thinking. Blanc admitted she could not understand what Julia saw in Falcon, calling him a libertine. Noir half agreed, adding that at least Falcon had talent, unlike that useless loser Luke. Blanc stepped closer, wrapping her arms around Noir from behind and telling her not to worry about him. Noir quietly accepted the reassurance. The next morning, the group gathered and stood ready before an entrance. Falcon declared that this must be the entrance the chieftain mentioned, and announced that they would find the evil overlord and send him back to hell. The entrance opened, and a massive golem appeared directly in front of them. Noir froze. Falcon charged to attack, but the golem dodged with unexpected speed. In an instant, knights surrounded the party from every direction. Falcon shouted in confusion, demanding to know what was going on. Julia reminded everyone that the chieftain claimed the entrance was not heavily guarded. Blanc responded that, unbelievable as it seemed, the old man had clearly lied. Noir watched as every enemy they defeated was replaced by even more soldiers. The battle grew increasingly violent. Falcon complained that his blade had chipped again. Amid the chaos, Noir's thoughts drifted to Luke. Whenever Luke repaired a weapon, he always added raw materials to strengthen it. Falcon kept repairing his sword without fixing its flaws, making it weaker each time. Noir's sense of dread deepened. Eventually, they reached the throne room. Falcon declared confidently that this had to be it, the moment to defeat their destroyer. A voice answered from the shadows. An elf stepped forward and introduced himself as the Dark King. He remarked that he was surprised such a small force had made it so far, and admitted he would need to reassess his judgment. Falcon responded crudely, telling the king to shut his mouth because they were there to destroy him. The king rose from his throne, commenting on how vulgar the hero sounded. He added that if violence was what they wanted, he had no choice. Raising his hand, the king unleashed a devastating attack. Falcon urgently called for Noir, and she immediately cast a protective barrier. The shield barely managed to block the strike. The king remarked that he might actually enjoy this fight. Falcon shot back that the king should enjoy it while he could because playtime was over. A soldier stepped forward and asked the king for permission to engage. Falcon grew angry at the interruption, declaring that weaklings like him should stay out of the way. He swung his sword down with full force. The soldier knelt and raised his weapon to block. The clash rang out sharply as Falcon's blade cracked against the soldier's sword, and he visibly panicked. Falcon becomes very nervous, and the subordinate elf breaks into mocking laughter. The elf admits he's had quite an entertaining time with them, but their luck has finally run out. Death waits for them now. Without hesitation, the subordinate charges forward with lethal intent. Julia immediately blocks Falcon's view. She throws herself directly into the path of the attack, taking the full brutal force meant for him. Falcon's desperate scream tears through the air as Julia crumples into his arms. Her injuries look severe, blood spreading across her clothes. Through shallow breaths, she manages to get words out. She wants Falcon to take her sword and keep fighting. The subordinate elf watches this display with a twisted sense of admiration, graciously offering Falcon the time he needs to retrieve the weapon. Falcon's voice comes out raw and venomous as he curses the creature before him. From where Noir lies watching, she describes how the entire battle shifts very fast. Everything deteriorates rapidly. Gandalf eventually forces their leader to drop his weapon entirely, then lifts Falcon by the throat while Blanc and Julia unconsciously rest on the cold dungeon floor. Noir herself remains alive, but helpless on the ground nearby. Gandalf finds something puzzling about the situation. These intruders managed to cut through the golem stationed outside with apparent ease. Yet they fell so readily to a mere subordinate like Norsley. Norsley requests permission to examine the situation more closely. The king picks up one of their swords and makes an interesting discovery. The blade shows significant damage from fighting through the earlier troops. Multiple low-level repair attempts have weakened its integrity to the breaking point. Their battle with Norsley became the final straw that shattered it completely. Gandalf moves closer to where Falcon dangles in his grip. Falcon forces his eyes open and refuses to accept this humiliation. His voice rises in fury, demanding to know if their defeat really comes down to something as trivial as level differences. His fist clenches tight as bitter thoughts consume him. Luke's name escapes his lips in a raw shout, questioning whether that worthless companion could have changed their fate. The king dismisses Falcon's outburst as the ramblings of someone losing touch with reality, ordering his subordinate to bring the prisoner closer. Falcon continues shouting his refusal to accept such a pathetic reason for their loss. Noir's thoughts echo in agreement. Luke's presence might have actually made the difference. The king raises his hand with clear intention, preparing to end the remaining survivors as a warning to others. His eyes fall on Noir, noting with mild surprise that consciousness still clings to her. He warns her to remain silent unless she wants to experience real suffering. Noir recounts what happens after that moment. The king places a curse mark directly onto her back before locking her away in a cell alongside Julia and Blanc. The guards provide basic food and leave them unbound, but no amount of physical freedom removes the heavy dread pressing down on their hearts. Julia gets taken first. Screams echo through the stone corridors as whatever horrible fate awaits her unfolds behind closed doors. Noir keeps asking the guards about Falcon's location, but they never provide answers. Eventually, she and Blanc adjust to their new reality of isolation. Then the guards come for Blanc. Tears stream down her face as rough hands drag her away, and Noir can only watch in complete powerlessness. Both of them never return to that cell. Noir knows her turn arrives next. The certainty of never seeing that prison again settles over her like a shroud. The guards bark orders at her to stand up when they finally come. Terror floods every part of her body. An earthquake suddenly shakes the entire structure at that exact moment. The guards exchange confused glances, wondering what kind of disturbance this could be. One suggests they need to investigate the source immediately. Noir recognizes this as her only chance. Every last drop of magic remaining in her depleted reserves goes toward creating a concealment spell around herself. She bolts through the opening they leave behind. The journey takes her across the dangerous Dragonlands back toward the entrance, leading to the dungeon's upper levels. Guards have already established defensive positions at that entrance point by the time she arrives. Her concealment magic has burned through completely, leaving her visible and far too weak to fight through a line of soldiers. Her eyes catch sight of a massive door nearby, and wind whistles through the gap where it stands slightly open. She recognizes this as the same mysterious door they noticed during their initial descent. The destination beyond that door remains completely unknown, but survival demands she take the risk. Noir forces her battered body up the steep incline beyond the threshold, muscles screaming in protest with each step. Light finally appears ahead after what feels like an eternity of climbing. Relief washes over her at the realization that this path actually leads outside. She emerges into open air with her body on the verge of complete shutdown. Pain radiates through every inch of her as consciousness starts slipping away. She whispers an apology to Blanc for failing to save her. Hope abandons her in those final moments before unconsciousness takes over. Then Luke's voice cuts through the fog, questioning if the figure before him could really be Noir. The person she sees defies all expectations, someone she never imagined encountering again. Back in the present moment, Noir sleeps peacefully in recovery. Luke absorbs everything she's revealed, unsure where to even begin processing such a horrific tale. Felix immediately suggests they need to request aid from the king himself, given the severity of the situation. Luke expresses surprise that Felix trusted him with Noir's vulnerable state. Felix responds with complete confidence. Luke saved Garnet's life, which proves his character beyond any doubt. Sylvia bursts into the room at that moment, breathing hard from running. She explains that an emergency situation requires their immediate attention outside. The town square erupts in chaos as they arrive. Citizens shout over each other in growing panic. One voice insists that facing a dragon means certain death, and nobody should remain in such a dangerous location. A shop owner counters desperately, pointing out that if all the adventurers abandon the town, local businesses will collapse entirely. Another resident complains that customer traffic to the hot springs has already dropped significantly after the recent dragon encounter, placing responsibility squarely on the guild to resolve this crisis. The crowd surrounds Miranda completely, their complaints building into an overwhelming wall of noise. Luke questions what exactly triggered this scene. Miranda spots him with visible relief, explaining that multiple dragon sightings have sent the entire town into panic mode. The guild manager's absence at such a critical time makes everything worse. Town residents press Luke directly, demanding confirmation about another dragon appearance and expressing shock at how dangerous their home has apparently become. Our dude recognizes the problem clearly. Most adventurers operating in Green Hollow barely reach E rank, completely unprepared for enemies as powerful as dragons showing up regularly. He pastes on a reassuring smile and addresses the crowd with confidence. The palace plans to send reinforcements soon, which will restore safety to the area. Someone points out the obvious flaw in this plan. Danger still exists in the present moment before any help arrives. Luke estimates roughly a week before reinforcements can reach them, then suggests immediate evacuation as the safest option. A food merchant explodes at this suggestion, explaining that even a few days without customers will spoil his entire inventory and destroy his livelihood. Luke realizes this argument could stretch on indefinitely as people continue voicing their concerns. One person emphasizes the threat of a dragon potentially attacking the town directly. Another counters that evacuation means losing far more than just business revenue. He considers his own position. He's a citizen of Green Hollow too, and watching shops close permanently or residents fall into poverty holds no appeal. Reluctance fills him, but the situation demands drastic action. He faces the crowd and captures their attention with a new announcement. His 15 years as an adventurer brought him into contact with numerous powerful individuals, despite his rank never progressing. For the town's sake, he promises to leverage those connections now. He drops several names deliberately: Dustin of the Two Spears, Roy of the Beast Prairies, Travis of Black Blade Ridge, and Theodore Beaufort the Dragon Slayer. These names should carry weight with anyone familiar with the adventuring community. Sylvia leans toward Miranda with a whispered question about whether she recognizes those names. Miranda confirms that every person mentioned belongs to the adventuring elite, all holding prestigious A-rank status. Luke reflects internally on how his long career introduced him to people who looked down on his low rank, but also created genuine friendships with incredibly skilled individuals. Luke continues his announcement, explaining that these A-rankers will immediately hire additional adventurers for support upon arrival. The crowd begins murmuring among themselves, interest clearly piqued. Luke sees his opening and pushes further. He reveals that an unexplored region exists within the Dragonlands, currently ruled by a mysterious Dark King. This information makes the adventuring community salivate with anticipation. He frames the situation as an incredibly rare opportunity, a chance for lower-ranked adventurers to gain direct exposure to how elite fighters operate up close. Nobody with ambition would pass up such valuable experience. He then shifts his attention to Miranda specifically, mentioning casually that the guild obviously needs adventurers willing to keep watch on the dungeon's 5th level until reinforcements arrive. The guild manager must have mentioned something about this already. Miranda responds automatically without thinking through the implication, confirming that such a request definitely came through. Luke seizes on this confirmation, adding that special compensation and higher-ranking opportunities await anyone showing particular initiative in taking on this assignment. The effect becomes immediate and dramatic. Adventurers practically stampede toward Miranda, all clamoring to sign up for the mission. She finds herself overwhelmed, frantically trying to organize everyone into a proper line for registration. Relief washes over Luke as the tension finally drains from his body. Sylvia approaches with a glass of water in hand, noting how exhausted he appears. He accepts it gratefully while she studies his face with concern. Something about his expression strikes her as unfamiliar. She points out how different he seems right now and checks whether everything sits okay with him internally. He takes a long drink before responding with his own question. Does his behavior really seem that unusual? Sylvia confirms this without hesitation, genuine curiosity coloring her words. Luke admits he wanted to avoid this particular course of action if any other option existed. She presses him on what makes him so reluctant about this approach. The answer carries visible discomfort. Reaching out to old acquaintances who've advanced so far beyond him, while his own progress stalled, completely feels degrading. These people moved forward with their lives and careers, achieving success after success. Meanwhile, he remained stuck at the same pathetic level for years. They probably see him as nothing more than a burden they had to drag along, a persistent headache requiring constant compensation. Sylvia absorbs his words before offering a different perspective. Even if some truth exists in his assessment, the current situation still demands his unique contribution. He might feel like his past accomplishments never amounted to much in the grand scheme of things, but those very same feats hold tremendous value right now. The town desperately needs what only he can provide. He searches for the right comparison to understand her point. Finding a lost key somewhere random becomes significant when that key unlocks someone's house. Something like that. Sylvia nods in agreement, affirming that his analogy works perfectly. This exact reasoning explains why viewing himself as a pathetic loser makes no sense. Pride should fill him instead when reflecting on everything he's contributed. The town loves him for good reason. His actions have created real, tangible benefits for Green Hollow and its people. Luke's expression shifts as deeper thoughts surface. Right now, being stuck characterizes his entire existence. Adventuring went on hiatus when he opened the weapon shop, creating this strange liminal space. Fighting feels impossible without the shadows of his inadequate past creeping in and shaking his confidence. Yet completely abandoning the adventuring life also seems unthinkable. Logically, he understands choosing one path or the other becomes necessary eventually. The pressure to make that definitive decision doesn't need to happen immediately, though. Sylvia rises from her seat and walks toward the window, gazing out at the town beyond. She reflects on how Green Hollow has always functioned as a refuge for weary people carrying heavy burdens. Visitors gravitate here specifically because something about this place offers comfort. Of course, simply arriving doesn't miraculously fix whatever problems plague them. The town can't solve deep personal issues or make life-altering choices on anyone's behalf. But something interesting happens anyway. People arrive weighted down, spend time here, then leave with noticeably lighter steps and renewed energy. Luke considers this observation, comparing it to some kind of magic. Sylvia positions her finger thoughtfully near her nose while gently correcting his assumption. Magic has nothing to do with it. The real explanation lies in understanding what happens when forward movement becomes impossible. Standing still gains importance during those moments. Remaining stationary allows perspective to shift, revealing things previously hidden. Sometimes the answer people desperately search for comes, and finds them instead while they wait. Her smile radiates warmth as she finishes speaking. Gratitude fills Luke's response. He points out how her smile specifically makes everything feel more manageable. The thought crosses his mind that maybe standing still really does hold value sometimes. Two town residents approach at that moment, enthusiasm radiating from them. They express sincere appreciation for how he handled the crowd earlier, admitting genuine fear about what might happen to their shops. Luke relates their concern from his position as a fellow shop owner. Staying silent while others faced potential ruin never crossed his mind as an option. The residents shift topics eagerly, requesting stories about those A-rank adventurers he mentioned. Details about his time traveling with such legendary figures would fascinate everyone. Luke finds himself slightly overwhelmed by their sudden intensity, suggesting they dial back their excitement a bit. Sylvia watches the interaction with clear amusement, teasing him about his newfound popularity. He responds with mild exasperation, wishing the attention would decrease just slightly. His internal thoughts refuse to dwell on emotions right now. This moment demands action, not brooding introspection. Green Hollow and its people need him to perform at his best. Later, chaos fills the space outside the weapon shop as voices overlap in a demanding chorus. Bella's worry becomes audible as she frantically searches for the spear inventory, customers insisting they need the tallest ones available. Our boy matches her panic while Sakura delivers news about an unexpected development. The Hunters Guild sent through an extra order, but instead of their usual hunting tools, they specifically want weapons designed for slaying monsters. Sylvia observes the crowded shop with genuine surprise. Yesterday's event seemed dramatic enough, yet she never anticipated this level of customer surge flooding through their doors. Luke balances a heavy box while apologizing to Sakura for dragging her into this hectic situation. Sakura carries her own load and dismisses his concern immediately, insisting he leave everything to them without worry. Gratitude fills his response, though reality paints a concerning picture. 3 people working at maximum capacity still barely manages the current demand. This pace threatens to sink the entire business if it continues much longer. A familiar voice cuts through the noise from behind. Luke turns to find Garnet standing there with an amused expression, commenting on how well business seems to be going. His greeting carries a teasing edge. Playing hooky from work seems unlike her. Garnet shoots back defensively that Felix himself ordered her to take the day off. Her real purpose for visiting involves settling an issue with him personally. Allowing anything bad to happen to a relative of her superior officer simply won't do. Luke checks whether her health holds up properly. She confirms her complete wellness without hesitation. He immediately takes advantage of her presence, thrusting the heavy box of weapons into her arms. The weight catches her off guard as he directs her to display the contents on a specific shelf across the room. Garnet protests at being put to work so suddenly. Luke gestures broadly at the overwhelming scene. Customers pack the shop wall to wall, and serving them all takes priority before any conversation happens. Sakura reinforces this point, drawing attention to the massive line currently being managed by Sylvia alone. Luke hasn't taken a single break since opening. Garnet concedes defeat with visible reluctance, agreeing to help out. Luke wastes no time piling on additional tasks. After finishing with that shelf, several more boxes need handling, followed by assistance with other duties. Garnet mutters something about needing to join a labor union while getting to work. Sylvia expresses heartfelt gratitude for Garnet's presence, specifically mentioning how having another man around the shop saves them tremendously. Sakura agrees that the situation finally seems manageable now that things are calming down slightly. Luke fixates on one particular word choice: man. Garnet's elbow connects sharply with his side before he can continue that thought. He quickly corrects himself in agreement. Sylvia suggests he take a proper break now that Sakura and she can maintain control. Relief washes over him as he accepts the offer, turning to Garnet with the proposal that they talk privately out back during his break. Garnet responds with exasperation about thinking nightfall would arrive before getting this chance. Heat radiates intensely as they step outside. Luke's thoughts briefly wander. He nearly forgot being the only person who knows Garnet's actual gender. Then another memory surfaces unbidden, specifically about accidentally seeing her chest during that repair work. His eyes drift downward involuntarily toward where she's removed her armor. Embarrassment floods through him as he realizes what he's remembering and where he's looking. He suggests she change clothes after they go back indoors. Garnet refuses flatly, insisting he needs to look at something important. Her fingers work at the buttons of her shirt, pulling the fabric open to reveal the area between her breasts. Our guy stares in confusion. Nothing appears wrong there. He voices concern about making a mistake during the repair process. Garnet clarifies that his repair work functioned perfectly, which creates the exact problem she's facing. His confusion deepens until she poses a direct question. Can his skill restore the mark that disappeared during the repair? His mind races through possibilities. The dragon wound seems most likely, but logic argues against anyone wanting that massive injury back. Garnet explains the situation properly. Before the dragon attack occurred, a scar already marked her chest. The repair process apparently overwrote that original scar with completely new skin. She came specifically to request if he could replace the scar that existed before. That's her real concern. Luke confirms he needs more details, but theoretically, the process seems possible without guaranteeing success. Garnet moves closer, her earnestness unmistakable as she presses him to try. He acknowledges having little choice when she asks this seriously. His guess leans toward the scar being some mark of valor or significant achievement. Garnet agrees vaguely that something along those lines fits. Our guy commits to attempting the restoration. Instructions flow naturally. She needs to picture the exact moment the wound occurred and hold that memory firmly in her mind. Garnet questions this mental requirement. Luke explains how his repair skill functions, reconstructing items by using restored memories as reference points. Stronger memory recall improves success chances dramatically. Understanding settles over her as she confirms readiness. He positions his hand against her chest and activates the skill. Images flood through his consciousness immediately. A woman gasping for breath while gripping another person's hand, pulling them desperately towards safety near ancient ruins. A figure wielding a sword blocks their escape route. Fear courses through the child's small body as her mother pulls her close protectively. The blade descends toward the mother's back, and in the chaos of movement, the strike catches across the girl's chest instead. A scream for her mother tears from young Garnet's throat. He pulls back as the process completes, announcing they're finished. Garnet examines the restored scar with satisfaction. It matches her memory perfectly. Luke's thoughts churn over what he witnessed. Perhaps the analysis aspect of his skill pulled him into her memories during the repair. That person was definitely her mother. The scene carries a weight he doesn't fully understand. Garnet shifts topics abruptly, delivering a message from Felix. They've finally reached a decision about his situation. Felix wants him to visit the guild after the shop closes today. Luke responds with mild exasperation. She really should have led with that critical information instead of burying it at the end. Garnet defends her choice by pointing out she did eventually tell him. Another detail surfaces. There's more to relay. Gratitude comes unexpectedly as Garnet thanks him with a genuine smile. Luke returns the courtesy easily. His internal thoughts expected her to lecture him about meddling in her personal business. but her happiness takes priority over those concerns. The following day brings a visitor to the shop informing him that Felix and his men wait in the back area. Luke confirms being summoned and heads to meet them. Felix greets him with an apology for the formal summons. Luke acknowledges hearing the basics from Garnet already. Apparently, the royal palace reached their decision in under 3 days. Felix corrects this assessment slightly. They decided on a specific day rather than making the actual decision. Confusion prompts Luke to question what that means. Felix produces a letter bearing unmistakable insignia, the royal palace seal. The letter contains an official summons. Apparently, the king himself intends to decide the matter personally 1 week from today. Shock registers clearly in Luke's response. His knowledge includes the fact that royal permission governs mithril harvesting and the sale of armor or weapons made from it, but actually requiring a personal audience with the king never crossed his mind as possibility. Felix mentions another matter requiring attention, producing a picture of something unusual. The image shows a sword embedded in a pedestal. Luke's thoughts turn cynical. They want him to create a weapon nobody can pull free from its base. Dropping such a ridiculous commission on him immediately after royal summons feels like whiplash, swinging from sublime to absurd. At least the project offers distraction from dwelling on the upcoming audience. Garnet suddenly launches herself from behind in an attack. Luke barely dodges while calling out her name. He understands guard duty requires vigilance, but actively destroying his shop seems excessive. His thoughts note how members of the Order of the Silver Wings have been stopping by throughout the week before his royal audience, ostensibly to keep watch over him. Garnet justifies her actions by claiming constant stillness causes weakness. Sakura apologizes on Garnet's behalf. Boredom drove Garnet to request helping with Sakura's training. Garnet leans closer to examine the commission request. Luke reflects internally that having these two around doesn't really disrupt his daily routine much. He confirms his intention to start the project immediately. Another thought surfaces about how Garnet's presence always seems to bring snow somehow. Garnet questions the actual methodology for creating something like this. Luke works through the logic. If the sword cannot be removed from the pedestal, then fusing the pedestal and blade together becomes the obvious solution. Sakura acknowledges the approach is certainly unique. Work progresses as our guy explains his process. Using repair on both a knife and a rock allows him to decompose both items completely. Recomposing only the blade while it remains connected to the stone creates a sword that physically cannot be removed. He demonstrates the finished product for Sakura's inspection. Sakura confirms the blade truly won't budge. Luke clarifies stopping the recomposition process halfway through creates permanent fusion between materials. Garnet expresses surprise at repair skill having such versatile applications. She shifts topics, mentioning how most people would avoid taking on jobs like this right before meeting royalty. Nervousness must be eating at him. Our main character admits his anxiety openly, but explains how work helps him relax. Garnet voices her curiosity. Luke poses a question to both of them. What kind of person actually is the king? Garnet identifies him as being from the eastern regions, implying different cultural knowledge. She launches into explanation about King Alfred uniting most of the western lands over the past 20 years. His influence continues spreading even now. Garnet provides historical context. People used to refer to this entire region simply as the Westlands. Several years ago, everything unified under the Kingdom of Westland designation. This ended the long era of warring chieftains, bringing most territories under singular royal rule. Sakura processes this information, comparing it to a victor emerging from civil war. Luke drops an interesting detail. The king used to be a humble adventurer before his rise to power. Sakura reacts with clear shock at learning someone ascended from adventuring to ruling an entire country. Luke continues the story. According to a highly respected leader from that time period, only someone who could retrieve a specific artifact from a certain dungeon deserved to rule. Alfred completed this quest successfully and claimed the throne. Sakura questions the authenticity of this tale. Garnet confirms its truth. The story carries widespread fame throughout the land. She adds an irritated request for Sakura to stop calling her dono constantly because it grates on her nerves. Sakura accepts this correction immediately. Garnet expresses approval at the casual form, suiting Sakura much better. Her attention then snaps to Luke, demanding to know why he's smirking. He apologizes while admitting the exchange simply made him feel like smiling for no particular reason. Time passes until the day arrives for the royal meeting. Felix guides him through the camp, pointing out where the king's royal retinue has established temporary residence. Nervousness manifests physically as Luke coughs. Garnet warns him not to pass out from anxiety. Felix offers reassurance with a smile that the king maintains an extremely good-humored disposition. They proceed inside the massive structure. The king greets him, acknowledging his arrival. The king presents himself as Alfred, and Luke's mind immediately starts processing what stands before him. Alfred, almost 50 years old, shows no obvious traces of his adventuring past, yet something about his presence triggers a sense of familiarity, as if their paths might have crossed before. Alfred declares perfect timing for a short break. Every noble who had been engaged in the meeting rises without hesitation and exits the room immediately. Our boy watches this coordinated departure with growing unease. His thoughts turn dark that these people apparently know enough about his background that leaving a guard behind seems pointless to them. The king addresses Luke directly as the White Wolf and gestures toward a seat. He encourages him to sit without concerning himself about who occupied that seat previously. He acknowledges the instruction while his internal confusion builds. This audience with royalty somehow includes permission to sit casually. The seat seems as acceptable as any other option available. His body moves to comply, but hesitation stops him mid-motion. He straightens back up instead of actually sitting. Alfred questions how any productive conversation can happen with him standing so far away. Nervousness colors his agreement. The king makes a valid point. Distance does create barriers to communication. Alfred shifts the discussion to official matters. All suspicion surrounding Luke has been completely cleared. He stands officially innocent of harming the hero Falcon and of conducting illegal mithril trade. The mithril situation caused considerable trouble for him. Our boy rushes to dismiss this concern, insisting no real harm occurred. The king continues without pause, moving to the critical issue demanding attention. Hero Falcon ignored direct palace orders and launched an unauthorized attack against the Dark Keep. His reckless actions made full-scale conflict with the Dark King completely unavoidable. Enemy forces strengthen their defensive positions even now as they speak. The kingdom's only remaining option involves sending a proper army to subdue these hostile forces. Luke's thoughts align with this assessment. Conflict has become truly unavoidable given current circumstances. Despite understanding this reality, confusion prompts him to voice a question. He can't comprehend why the king shares such sensitive strategic information with him specifically. Alfred explains the palace's intention to construct a military outpost within Sundial Forest. This base serves dual purposes, providing headquarters for adventurers investigating the region and functioning as the Order's official office. Luke begins forming the logical conclusion about what comes next. The king confirms his assumption before Luke can finish the thought. Alfred directly requests Luke's assistance with this endeavor. The specific task involves researching the mysterious door leading to the dungeon's deepest level. They plan to establish machinery for equipment upgrades at the new facility. Numerous responsibilities await Luke's attention if he accepts. Alfred's hand lands on Luke's shoulder as he continues speaking. Naturally, hefty compensation accompanies these duties. Luke's reaction falls far short of enthusiasm, leaving him visibly confused. Alfred mirrors this confusion, pointing out how unusual this response seems. He genuinely expected offering interesting work would generate more excitement than mere financial compensation. Luke forces a smile while explaining his hesitation. These jobs carry significant scope for a single person to handle. Someone with his track record of failure probably won't measure up to such important tasks. His internal thoughts paint a clearer picture. These opportunities definitely come with attractive advantages, but the scale consistently exceeds what one person can manage alone. Past experience taught him this lesson repeatedly. Alfred clarifies that nobody forces this choice on him. He simply requests Luke review the proposed plans and provide honest feedback. Documents change hands as Luke begins examining the details. One element immediately captures his attention. Construction safety protocols require temporarily closing Sundial Forest to public access for 3 full months. His mind races through the implications. Green Hollow's entire economy depends heavily on Sundial Forest income. Cutting off that revenue stream for a 3-month period would destroy nearly every resident's livelihood. He addresses the king with this critical concern, explaining how the town's population couldn't survive such disruption. Alfred anticipated this exact objection. The same worry troubled him initially as well. However, the Order of the Golden Fangs plans to garrison at the completed base. Their presence ensures intercepting Dark King troops or any monsters that emerge becomes possible. Luke's discomfort grows as he processes this information. His thoughts acknowledge the plan's safety merits when viewed purely from a strategic standpoint, without considering economic devastation. The king invites Luke's input directly. Any ideas or alternative suggestions would receive genuine consideration. Pressure builds in Luke's chest as nervousness intensifies. The king himself actively solicits his opinion, creating a singular opportunity that won't come again. He forces himself to respond despite his anxiety. Our dude acknowledges his forwardness but criticizes the plan's fundamental timeline problem, a scheme meant to protect townspeople that simultaneously destroys their economic survival serves no productive purpose. However, his repair skill offers potential to dramatically shorten construction duration. Alfred's interest becomes apparent as he questions how Luke intends to accomplish this acceleration. The methodology sounds straightforward when Luke explains it. Demolishing existing buildings from nearby towns and cities provides raw materials. Transporting this debris to the forest location comes next. Then his repair skill reconstructs everything at the new site. Each building only requires about half its original debris since stone and wood from the dungeon itself can supplement the remaining materials needed. Alfred responds with genuine interest to this innovative approach. Only someone possessing such a rare skill could conceive this particular solution. Luke identifies the single constraint limiting this plan: his personal magic reserves. Repairing even one house completely drains him under normal circumstances. The king dismisses this limitation immediately. Mana crystals exist in abundance, and he can provide however many Luke requires without concern. Now that Luke's brilliant alternative sits on the table, the formal meeting needs to resume. Alfred wants Luke present for the discussions ahead. Opposition will come from officials and nobles, but the king encourages him not to hold back or show weakness in defending his proposal. Our main character assures him to do well in the discussions ahead. The meeting proceeds with Luke presenting his case about material reuse capabilities. This approach offers clear advantages: completing construction without massive expense, while addressing the most pressing concern about the passage leading to the Dark Keep. Reducing the base construction timeline makes the entire proposal viable in his assessment. Relief floods through him as he finishes his explanation. The gathered officials seem receptive to these ideas, which lifts a significant weight from his shoulders. King Alfred turns his attention toward a particular man in the room. Luke follows this gesture and immediately identifies the source of potential complications. The representative from the Order of the Golden Fang sits watching with careful evaluation. Alfred directly solicits this man's opinion on the proposal. Gilbert, as the representative, acknowledges the merit in Luke's ideas, but presents two specific requests from his order. First, the debris materials should come specifically from their order's Crane Fort branch facilities. Second, they want authorization for establishing an additional base of operations. His finger traces a location on the displayed map, right at the first site where the dragon previously emerged from Dark King territory. Gilbert acknowledges this expansion transforms the project into a significantly larger undertaking, but Luke's unique skill set should prove equal to the challenge. Luke confirms his capability without hesitation. Gilbert immediately pledges his full support for the modified plan. Gratitude colors Luke's response as consensus appears to form around the room. Agreement seems universal among the assembled officials. Alfred formalizes this decision, announcing additional compensation beyond the original terms. Once both bases reach completion, Luke receives an official license permitting him to work with Mithril. The king expresses high expectations for Luke's performance. Luke acknowledges this tremendous honor while his thoughts celebrate the meeting's conclusion. Finally, this ordeal ends. He begins making moves toward departure when Alfred calls him back. Luke returns to the king's side, questioning what additional service he can provide. Alfred dismisses this formality, explaining his desire for simple conversation. Considerable time has passed since he last heard anyone mention Luke's homeland by name. Confusion registers on Luke's face at this unexpected comment. The king elaborates on his personal connection to White Wolf Wood, specifically a small village located nearby. He spent one night there during his succession trial journey. That evening involved deep, meaningful conversations with his entire party, creating memories he still treasures. Our boy processes this revelation before voicing a question that's been building in his mind. What motivated Alfred to abandon adventuring and pursue kingship instead? The king responds with mild amusement, checking whether Luke genuinely wants this story. Luke quickly apologizes for any rudeness in his curiosity. Alfred waves off this concern with a smile while adding one condition: this particular tale stays private. The simple answer involves falling in love. Luke's shock becomes immediately visible. Struggling to comprehend this confession, the king continues his explanation. He met his future queen during their shared adventuring days. Luke expresses surprise at learning the queen also came from an adventuring background. Alfred confirms her status at that time, admitting his own obliviousness to her true identity initially. Their travels together gradually revealed mutual attraction growing between them. However, deeper complications existed beyond simple romance. The king poses a question about Luke's knowledge regarding throne succession requirements. Exploring the dungeon and retrieving a specific artifact, Luke confirms his awareness of this condition. Alfred reveals the complete picture. Marriage to the princess and joining the royal family formed the other half of these requirements. The princess possessed tremendous strength of will. Upon learning how her future husband would be selected, she decided to complete the quest herself, rather than passively waiting. Luke's thoughts immediately understand why Alfred fell for someone with such determination. The king describes how she chose the adventuring path to pursue this goal. When officials formally revealed the full succession conditions, the princess stood first in line demanding immediate return to the palace. Alfred's recognition of her true identity hit him in that exact moment. One question consumed his thoughts afterward. How could he possibly choose any path except becoming her king? Luke absorbs the weight of this decision. One man restructured his entire life for the sake of one woman's ambitions and their shared future. Alfred continues recounting how he gathered his party and faced the succession trial together. That particular night in White Wolf Wood carried special significance. Pressure threatened to overwhelm him completely. Seeking relief, he spent hours reminiscing about adventuring exploits with the village headman's son. Luke's attention sharpens at this specific detail. The headman's son listened to these stories. Alfred confirms this enthusiastically, launching into examples of tales he shared that evening. Landing on what appeared to be an island in an underground sea, only discovering the surface was actually a giant turtle shell. Cutting through a hole in a dragon's wing mid-flight, using only his sword. Luke prompts him about other adventures. Alfred's face lights up remembering another favorite. Stealing a magic diadem from directly under an undead king's awareness. The memory clearly brings him joy. Luke's internal thoughts race through implications he's never shared with anyone except Sylvia and Sakura. 20 years before arriving in Green Hollow, his life took a defining turn. Adventurers visited his village and filled young Luke's imagination with incredible stories of their exploits. Those tales planted the seeds that eventually grew into his own desire to become an adventurer. One more question demands asking. Luke voices his curiosity about Alfred's current feelings regarding his adventuring years. The king acknowledges criticism from certain quarters. Voices claiming that if he'd aimed for kingship from the beginning, the Westlands might have unified a full decade earlier. He dismisses this perspective as completely absurd. Success and failure both shaped who he became. Every lesson learned during those years proved essential. Without that accumulated experience and growth, he's certain he would have died in battle 20 years ago. Laughter punctuates his reflection as Alfred adds a private confession. Moments arise occasionally where he considers abdicating and returning to adventuring life. Every single time such thoughts surface, something happens demonstrating how much people need him in his current role. This realization prevents him from abandoning his responsibilities. People require his service as king. Similarly, somewhere out there, someone needs Luke specifically as an adventurer. Personality alone doesn't determine one's path. Discovering the exact place where someone truly belongs requires recognizing where they're genuinely needed. Alfred suggests someone already shared similar wisdom with Luke previously. Memory surfaces immediately. Sylvia's words echo through Luke's mind. Even if his perspective seems limited, people still need him. The place where he belongs exists because others require what only he can provide. The king observes Luke's contemplation, questioning whether this conversation cleared his doubts. Luke responds with unexpected honesty. His doubts actually intensified rather than diminished. Now he recognizes how every potential path leads towards something wonderful. The challenge becomes even more difficult when choosing just one direction seems harder than before. His smile reflects this pleasant dilemma. Alfred mirrors this expression, characterizing Luke's situation as being spoiled for choice. His hand reaches out and pats Luke's head with paternal warmth. He encourages the headman's son to release all accumulated worries. Our guy later confirms the shop's closure and checks his packed luggage one final time. Everything appears ready for departure. Sylvia comes running up at that moment, greeting him with morning cheer. He questions Sylvia's presence at such an early hour. She explains hearing about his special assignment starting today motivated her to see him off properly. The reality of a military outpost being constructed in Sundial Forest still feels surreal to her. She struggles momentarily with the facility's name. Hollowdown Fort sounds right. Luke shares her disbelief, particularly about being personally requested to assist with such a significant project. His thoughts drift to the massive underground space Noir described during her testimony. The fifth level of the dungeon holds this enormous cavity where the frontline base will stand. Its purpose centers on preemptively defending against the Dark King's army. The construction plan involves surrounding the passage Noir and the dragon emerged from, then establishing blockades at strategic points. As long as these bases maintain their integrity, only Allied forces gain passage beyond the blockades. He voices his determination about the completed outpost, virtually guaranteeing Green Hollow's safety. The town deserves everything he can possibly contribute. Sylvia observes him with a knowing smile, noting how his demeanor carries more happiness than usual. Energy radiates from him in ways she hasn't witnessed before. Luke considers her observation and admits maybe some truth exists there. She remembers their previous conversation about what initially drew him to adventuring. Recently, he reconnected with one of those original inspirational figures from his youth. These people achieve amazing things constantly even now. Since admiration for them sparked his adventuring dreams originally, living up to their example matters tremendously. Sweating small details serves no productive purpose. Sylvia processes this information before voicing a natural concern. This reconnection probably rekindles his desire for adventuring, potentially leading him to leave town. Perhaps he'd even depart alongside that person. Luke pauses as realization hits him. The actual situation differs completely from her assumption. That particular adventurer quit the lifestyle long ago. The decision didn't stem from disliking adventuring or throwing away past accomplishments. He simply encountered someone who needed him and recognized where he truly belonged. He continues explaining how he witnessed this person shining brightly despite no longer adventuring actively. Finding something new to admire about them beyond their adventuring prowess brings him genuine happiness. Sylvia responds warmly, characterizing this person as truly wonderful. Luke agrees wholeheartedly. His thoughts acknowledge King Alfred, choosing the path toward kingship. Now, two distinct choices present themselves before Luke's own future. Honesty compels him to admit part of him genuinely wants resuming adventuring life. Concern flashes across Sylvia's expression. Luke continues before she can voice her worries. An equal part, actually an even stronger pull, keeps him anchored. Green Hollow and the shop represent where he belongs. Beyond that, leaving without repaying Sylvia and the entire town for their extraordinary kindness remains unthinkable. His intention focuses on staying exactly where he currently stands. This commitment requires continuing to count on Sylvia's support. She responds with immediate reassurance. Whatever help he needs, she'll provide without hesitation. Time passes and the scene shifts to the construction base. Sakura questions whether the area has undergone complete transformation again. Luke confirms her observation. Work on the forest base nears completion. Today marks the beginning of underground base setup. Sakura mentions heading the same direction since her quest involves exploring and securing what they're calling the Dark Keep Zone. Our boy repeats this terminology with slight unease. The subterranean area now carries this ominous designation. The name itself sends uncomfortable shivers through him. Sakura dismisses his concern casually. He'll adjust to it eventually. Felix suddenly appears, announcing his need to verify travel permits. Sakura recalls something about this location having a door mechanism previously. Luke explains the royal entourage's inability to disable the door from outside, which led to him decomposing the entire structure. This solution allows free passage in and out. The king's philosophy proved characteristically bold. If passage couldn't happen easily, smashing obstacles became the obvious solution. Sakura confirms this marks her first visit to this depth. Curiosity about the place colors her anticipation. Our boy admits this represents his first return since decomposing the door. The sight never fails to amaze him. The vast underground expanse stretches before them as they take in the scenery. Luke marvels at such a place existing beneath the Earth's surface. Many dungeons feature underground grottos and caverns, but something this enormous qualifies as exceptionally rare. Sakura's gaze wanders across the landscape while she mentions these lands supposedly serving as dragon territory. The current peaceful atmosphere contradicts that reputation entirely. Luke agrees, which explains one reason for deploying extra-large barrier stones. 4 of these powerful artifacts occupy each corner of the base perimeter. Even dragons cannot approach too closely with this protection active. Sakura confirms these repel magic beasts, expressing wonder at seeing one in person for the first time. Luke explains their rarity. Only a small number of alchemists possess the skill to craft them. Normal usage restricts these items to marking out specific locations rather than permanent defensive installations. Sakura begins asking about another reason behind something when a massive tentacle erupts from nowhere behind her position. Someone arrives apologizing for the intrusion. The creature apparently proved quite spirited, causing him to employ perhaps excessive force in subduing it. Luke nervously insists the intervention came at any time without complaint. Sakura pieces together the situation, questioning whether this newcomer represents the other reason Luke mentioned earlier. He confirms her deduction and introduces Theodore Beaufort, the Dragon Slayer. Theodore's background fascinates Sakura, born into nobility yet choosing adventuring specifically to fight dragons. He ranks among the A-rank adventurers Luke called for assistance. Their past travels together featured an awful relationship dynamic, but Theodore rushed over immediately upon hearing dragons populated this region. Luke characterizes Theodore as someone capable of facing dragons solo, a feat Luke himself attempted and failed at soundly. Sakura expresses her wish to quickly become worthy of wielding her blade properly. Luke offers to check how her katana's adaptation progresses. Sakura welcomes this inspection enthusiastically, having actually planned to request exactly this service. He activates his analysis skill and examines the weapon carefully. The adaptation process continues, but still requires more time before completion. Patience remains essential at this stage. He smiles while sharing an old Eastern saying about how those walking 100 miles should consider themselves only halfway there at the 99th mile. Both Sakura and her katana need patience and strength through this gradual process. Luke acknowledges his advice might not carry much weight coming from him specifically. Sakura contradicts this perception. Determination suddenly fills her completely thanks to his words. Something else comes to mind. She requests he look after her wakizashi during today's activities. Luke questions this decision. Sakura explains wanting to train using only her katana exclusively today. She promises not to push herself dangerously hard. Our dude accepts responsibility for the wakizashi's safekeeping and wishes her luck. Sakura thanks him before catching herself. The phrase break a leg probably doesn't suit this particular situation well. She hands over the wakizashi while expressing hopes he performs his duties safely without incident. Luke offers prayers for her good fortune in return. His declaration carries firm resolve. Zero intention of dying exists before completing this job. Sakura adds that she hopes his survival plans extend beyond job completion as well. So much remains ahead where she'll need his continued assistance. The scene transitions to Felix directing the haulage team toward designated repair material placement in the construction zone. He reminds Luke about their previous discussion regarding material sources. The surrounding earth and rock cannot be used for repairs. Luke confirms understanding. Old mining tunnels riddle the area. Taking materials from wrong locations risks a catastrophic collapse. Felix verifies the tunnels should maintain stability as long as they avoid disturbing them. Luke prepares himself by producing the mana crystals King Alfred provided. These powerful items enable the work ahead. He announces his intention to begin and warns everyone to maintain safe distance. His hand contacts the structure as he activates his repair skill. Felix watches in amazement, expressing disbelief at how quickly Luke constructs such huge structures using only this single skill. He requests Luke move to the armory next on the schedule. Luke senses something wrong suddenly. Did anyone else perceive that strange occurrence? A massive explosion tears through the area before anyone can respond. Guards shout in alarm, questioning whether this represents a demon attack. The blast's source remains unclear, prompting calls for heightened alert status. Luke's attention fixes on something manifesting before him. A figure with dragon features combined with human characteristics materializes, unclear whether this entity qualifies more as dragon or man. Guards scream warnings about an enemy breaching their position somehow. Luke focuses on the creature's magical shield, recognizing how this protection absorbed the landing impact forces. Guards prepare their arrows and unleash a coordinated volley. Every projectile strikes true, yet the enemy remains completely unharmed by the assault. Confusion and fear spread among the defenders as the humanoid dragon raises its hand and attacks with devastating effect. Luke's thoughts race. This creature completely outstrips their forces in both raw power and technical skill. A knight desperately shouts for Luke to flee immediately. Luke's assessment concludes even Felix or Sakura might struggle matching this opponent's capabilities. Felix screams directions to move toward safety urgently. The enemy suddenly manifests directly in front of the guard formation before they can react. It passes through their line effortlessly and appears behind his position. Terror freezes Luke momentarily as he comprehends the impossible speed this creature commands. Luke then opens his eyes and finds himself lying at the bottom of a ravine. Rock walls tower above him on both sides. The dragon creature attacked him and sent him falling down here. The drop should have killed him instantly, but he managed to repair his body during the fall. Without that quick thinking, death would have come for certain. He pushes himself up and tries to make sense of what just happened. That creature looks half dragon and half human, something he's never encountered before. The strangest part keeps bothering him. Every guard attacked it, but the thing ignored them completely and came straight for him instead. This feels personal rather than random. Our main character checks his equipment and panic hits him. The sword isn't in its sheath anymore. Even worse, Sakura's wakizashi has disappeared too. He scans the ravine floor until he spots the blade wedged between some rocks nearby. Relief washes over him. Losing something Sakura trusted him with would be unforgivable. He starts moving toward the weapon when an explosion booms from somewhere above. Luke throws himself behind a boulder just in time. The creature hasn't given up on hunting him down here. His mind races through available options. Fighting that thing head-on means dying quickly. The power gap between them stretches too wide. Running won't work either at this distance because the thing moves too fast to outpace. One choice remains. Luke sprints toward the ravine wall and activates his analysis skill while running. The Dark King's troops have been building throughout these mountains for months. Mining tunnels must cut through the rock everywhere around here. His skill picks up the structural weaknesses he hoped to find. He switches to decomposition and blasts a hole straight through the solid stone. He dives through the opening as the dragon creature closes in fast behind him. Something like a tentacle whips toward him, but he's already through. He triggers repair immediately and the stone wall rebuilds itself, sealing the entrance just before the creature reaches it. Those few seconds of separation might save his life. The space around him looks old, far older than the mining tunnels he expected. Some kind of ancient chamber sits here with a strange door at the far end. A thunderous crash echoes through the stone as the creature starts smashing against the wall he just repaired. Luke grips his mana crystal tighter. The single-minded pursuit doesn't add up unless something specific drives it to target him. Two paths stretch before him. He can stay here and keep repairing the wall every time the creature breaks through, hoping Theodore and the others find him before his mana crystals run out. Or he can go deeper into these passages and search for another way out. Neither option feels safe, but sitting still just delays the inevitable. Luke makes his choice and moves forward. He heads down the stairs carved into the ancient stone, putting distance between himself and the immediate danger. His hand trails along the wall as he descends, checking for hidden passages or weak points. A dead end appears ahead. Something might hide behind this wall, but he doesn't get time to investigate. Dread hits him before he understands the reason. The creature couldn't have caught up this fast. Then he feels the presence right behind him. Impossible speed just put his hunter exactly where Luke stands. The dragon creature materializes in front of him, and before Luke can react, a blade punches straight through his stomach. The pain hasn't caught up to his brain yet. Shock and adrenaline keep him moving. The creature grins at him, clearly satisfied with landing this strike. Luke grabs the sword sticking out of his own body. One chance remains for survival. His mind clicks through the process quickly. He activates analysis on the blade, then switches straight to decomposition. The sword breaks down into its basic parts. Luke doesn't stop there. He pulls in pieces of the creature's armor too, mixing everything together as raw material. Then he triggers repair, but not on himself. That noble's ridiculous request taught him how to fuse a sword into stone so nobody could pull it free. The same technique works here. He fuses the sword parts with the creature's own armor and flesh. The dragon creature screams as its weapon reconstructs inside its body, stabbing it from within. Luke manages a smile despite his situation. He didn't think that would actually work, but desperation creates room for creative solutions. The technique he developed for that impossible commission just saved his life in the most unexpected way. Then the wounds start closing. The creature heals itself in seconds, which shouldn't be possible. Fire explodes around its body as it prepares to torch everything in this confined space. Luke yanks out the wakizashi desperately. It's time for another attempt at survival. Sakura mentioned something about High Hero Kane conducting fire exceptionally well. The metal doesn't just conduct it, but amplifies the intensity too. If he can use that property in reverse, maybe he can absorb all this fire and redirect it back. Luke commits to the technique before doubt stops him. The redirection succeeds. The flames pour toward the creature instead of burning Luke alive. He shouts and charges forward, certain he can finish this fight now. His strike lands clean on the creature's mask. The protective covering shatters and flies off, but the creature itself remains standing without injury. Our dude drops the fusion technique immediately. He's exhausted every trick available to him. Nothing remains except repairing himself if things get worse, but that becomes his absolute last resort. The creature pulls off what remains of its mask completely. Luke's confusion doubles and he realizes that the mask must have blocked speech somehow. The guy then speaks his name directly, leaving him in shock at his ability to speak. He realizes that the mask was the obstacle. Just then, realization hits him that how is the guy as familiar with his name?
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.